we're live. We're live.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fam Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcilio Langella. Mars, as we let people come filtering in, we are hitting our Week 8 preview show. Live again for the third week, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, dude.
Just want to make sure everything is going smooth. Yep, there we go. I want to welcome our audience. I know that you guys are going to be filtering in. We really do appreciate you guys for joining. Again, doing another live show. But what I like about this the live show aspect is that you can go back and watch it. So it kind of serves as a, going live. But if you didn't get a chance to catch all of it, you can go back and watch, which I do think is pretty cool. And again, this is a bit of an experiment. We kind of got pushed into this because of work-related things where hasn't had the same time that we had before earlier in the season to kind of do pre-made videos. So going live has kind of been a huge help for us. But we're into playoff football. I mean, AA is hitting their first playoff games. A, B, the Hudson Valley Football League are in their semifinals. And this is the last week of the regular season for the C and D schools. So we are in a lot of do or die moments for these teams. Playoff football is obviously the best. So this is going to be a huge moment, Mars.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that, like you already said before, this is elimination football for, obviously we're going to talk about A, B, AA, A, and B, and HVFL. And I think that obviously for C and D, they still have one more week of their, regular season games. But yeah, I think that either way, this is exciting because now we're finally touching playoff football. And on top of that, like you said, this is do or die. This is where all the chips are on the table now, right? It's a do or die. You see desperation mode. You're going to see all out for these playoff games.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mars, do you mind plugging in our links and stuff below while I post these links online, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So first off, guys, if you go check out on the description below, where you have all of our different links. I believe that should be embedded already. If all the links are located below, guys. So if you do want to hit us up with some donations to help the channel grow, there's a donations link. There's also a link to the website that gets updated as we do these live streams. We have the we have the Twitter page and our Instagram that's growing day by day, and obviously we have our Patreon, and that is obviously a big hitter. We're getting a lot of new content on there as well. I know that Frank has been working on some exclusive content going on, and on top of that, we just have just the daily support from everyone here would be really appreciated, because obviously we are it's just me and Frank making these shows, and we do all the editing, we do all the all the research and everything. So at the end of the day, every viewer, every single person that comes and watches our shows and enjoys them is obviously a big benefit to us. But obviously getting any sort of donations or Patreon would also help develop the channel even further. So definitely, guys, appreciate all the support up to this point. We've been growing a lot since 2019 we started this thing. So it's been a great ride so far, and I can't wait to see us when we finally hit that that monetization. We hit that 1,000 subscriber count. It's going to be great. So please make sure you guys go let other people know too. Anyone that's a fan of Section 1 football or HVFL football, go tell them to go jump on and subscribe to Fan Sports New York. And obviously, we really do appreciate you guys coming out to watching the show. Live streams obviously are going to be, they're exciting at the same time, but we also do like to do our little graphics that we always include in all of our recorded shows. So biggest thing, man, is that we're in playoff football, guys. So I really do appreciate you guys coming out to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, those joining the show, we really do appreciate it. If you have any questions, throw it into the comment section. We're going to be focusing on the playoffs for this show and talking about picking the C and D games, because we do talk about every regular season game. So we're not going to leave C and D out of it. They're in their last week of the regular season, but the main focus is going to be on the playoffs. And so, Mars, let's talk about the games on slate, and then we'll kind of show where the brackets are currently for the playoffs. And then we'll kind of dive into those playoff matchups. So let's do it, Mars. And again, make sure to give that thumbs up and subscribe for future content. And Mars, the games on slate, let's start with the AA playoff games that are happening. We have number 4 Scarsdale and number 4 seed. Excuse me when I mentioned that. Number 4 Scarsdale at number 1 Carmel. Number 4 Mount Vernon at number 1 Mamaroneck. We have number 3 New Rochelle at number 2 Arlington, and number 3 North Rockland at number 2 seed John Jay East Fishkill. For A, we have the number 4 seed John Jay Cross River at number 1 seed Clarkstown South, who won the B League. We have number 4 Brewster at number 1 Somers, who won the A League. We have number 3 Rye at number 2 Pelham, and number 3 Mayapack at number 2 Harrison. For B, we have number 8 Hen Hud at number 1 Pleasantville, number 6 Bronxville at number 3 Nanuet. We have the number 7 seed Briarcliff Hamilton football program at number 2 Byram Hills. Number 5 Pearl River at number 4 Ardsley. For the Hudson Valley Football League, which is in the semifinals, we have number 2 seed Edgemont at number 1 seed Walter Panis, and the number 2 seed Spring Valley at number 1 seed Greeley. As for the C&D schools, again, the last week of regular season, we have Valhalla at Pud Valley in a league game. We have Woodlands at Tuckahoe in a league game, that's C&D matchup. We have Albertus Magnus at Westlake in a league matchup. We have Rhinebeck at Blindbrook in a league matchup. We have a CD matchup of Haldane at Croton Harmon in a league matchup. And finally, Irvington at Dobbs Ferry. So those are the games on slate. When you look at the brackets, Mars, and AA brackets, we have Scarsdale and Carmel, like I mentioned before, and they're actually the winner of that game is going to play the winner of North Rockland versus John Jay East Fishkill. And on the other side, it is Mount Vernon and Mamaroneck. And the winner of that game is going to play the winner of New Rochelle and Arlington. So that's kind of how the bracket's set up there. And for A, it's Brewster and Somers is going to be playing the winner of Mayapack and Harrison. And obviously the higher seed is going to be home field. And on the other side, John Jay Cross River at South is going to play the winner of Ryan Pelham on A side. And for B, we have Hen Hud versus Pleasantville. And the winner of that game plays the winner of Pearl River and Ardsley. And Briarcliff Hamilton football program at Byram Hills plays the winner of Bronxville Nanuet. And if you look at the C and D standings, D is obviously they're going straight to the section finals at that time, which is Tuckahoe and Haldane. But C is interesting. I mean, when you look at, again, 4 teams, the top 2 on each side go into the playoffs. They go right into a semis. And it's going to be, right now, on one side, Westlake and Valhalla, I believe have both clinched. I think Westlake, with the win versus Valhalla, clinched the number 1 spot. Valhalla has clinched the number 2 spot. But on the other side, we have Dobbs Ferry, who's sitting 3-1 in league play, 6-1 overall. Irvington's at 3-4, 2-2 in league play. And Blindbrook, who beat Irvington last week, is sitting at 2-6, but they're 1-3 in league play. So there hasn't been a clinch yet of the number 2 spot. I think Dobbs Ferry has clinched the number 1 spot, but the question is, who's going to be number 2? And I'm interested to see, I'm curious those in chat if they know how the tiebreaker works in C, because the tiebreakers have kind of been a little different when it goes to AA, A, and downward. I know obviously the first one is league record, but is the second tier, is that overall record or is it head-to-head? Because Blindbrook has the head-to-head tiebreaker and Irvington has the overall record tiebreaker. So, but we'll get into that because, you know, I mentioned the big matchups, Irvington versus Dobbs Ferry and Blindbrook versus Rhinebeck, both league games. So that's going to be a big determination on who gets into the playoffs. And obviously, the Hudson Valley football, we mentioned the semifinals. So those are kind of the setups. Again, appreciate you guys for joining. Make sure you guys throw in your comments in the comments section. Tell us who you think is going to win these games when we start talking about them, or any questions that you have. Make sure to jump in the chat. We appreciate you guys. Let's start in AA, Mars. Number 4 seed Scarsdale, 4-3 at number 1 seed Carmel, who's 7-0. And an interesting little tidbit here is these teams have split their matchups 2-2 since 2004. And the last time they played was in 2019 when Carmel beat Scarsdale in a lopsided victory. But haven't played each other a lot. Again, 2-2. So Scarsdale's held up pretty well versus Carmel. And when we start with Scarsdale, you know, this is a scrappy team. And I think they have some playmakers on them. Offensively, they're number 6 offense out of the 14 teams in AA, the 5th rated offense out of the 8 playoff teams. And that last week at times, it was a struggle to move the ball. And they really hurt themselves last week with turnovers and sacks. They gave up 4 sacks. They had an INT. But let's not kid ourselves. Scarsdale has kind of they have different facets to their offense. They have the option stuff that we always known Scarsdale to be, some tight end wing stuff, some double slot stuff. But they also have some of the spread stuff where they do their power read stuff. So they have the under center option. They have some of the gun option aspects. And then they can kind of go into some spread and do some play action passing, some bootlegs, some waggle concepts. And I do think that's their formula. And how they come out against Carmel, which is tough to run against. But we're going to see Carmel's a very aggressive defense. And the option sometimes could be an antidote to that, right? Because you have to force them to do responsibility football. And there are times that you can kind of attack an aggressive defense with that. But the show is with their quarterback, Colby Baldwin. I mean, he is a big-time playmaker, and I think one of the best athletes in the class. There hasn't really been that. Now, obviously, Scarsdale's lost games, and there's times the offense have struggled to put up a lot of points, but there hasn't been a defense that has shut him down because he's that dynamic. He doesn't need a lot of room. And that's got to be the goal, right, is to get him out in space. But there's going to be others that are going to have to step up. I mean, Campbell Killian is a guy who has stepped up at times running the football. Their fullback, Will Gergurcio, is another guy who has had some really bright moments. And they have a couple tight ends that have done a decent job, whether it is catching some passes on some drags or blocking. DeMoria, Noah Chappelle. I mean, these are guys going to have to be huge. This offensive line, I'm really interested to see how they match up against a very tough Carmel front, Mars, and linebacking core. They're a load. I mean, teams that had a lot of tough times running the football. How does this offensive line play against them? They're going to have to use their leverage, use their speed, and they're going to have to mess with the eyes of this defensive line. Again, Carmel's at times, and you saw it even last week, they've really stout, but they gave up a long passing touchdown, and that's been kind of the Achilles heel of Carmel's defense, if there is one to kind of draw to, is kind of those big pass plays. The Scarsdale try to air it out a little bit more than what they normally would is another interesting aspect. Defensively, listen, before last week, they allowed 20 points and 0 points, right, the previous 2 weeks. Last week they had a tough performance, but this defense overall has been pretty scrappy. This is another scrappy defense, but they did give up over 200 yards rushing last week. We know Carmel's focus is running the football and running with some power. So it's going to be really important for them to slow down the run game. Mars, what are your thoughts on Scarsdale and kind of what is their keys to try to pull off the upset?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is Scarsdale has been one of those probably scrappiest teams we've seen off season. I think they've always been competitive against every team. And I think they put themselves on the map when they beat Arlington in that last second catch, which was, great play by, but just all around, I think. And it really shocked a lot of teams when they did beat them. But I think you have to give them a lot of credit. Their offense and defense have both been tough all season long. And you have to give, I think, offensively, they've just been kind of very versatile what they can do. They've been kind of going with their classic option style offense, which has always been a Scarsdale trademark. But at the same time, they've been doing a lot of spread. And I think they just have been a lot of been very effective at just moving the ball around and just really scoring points for the most part. But I think the biggest thing they always still do to this point is they basically just control the time of possession. I think they've always found a way to own that. And I think that is something that is going to give them at least an advantage against Carmel. Because like you said, Carmel looks to try to, make the big plays, score points in fast fashion a lot of times. And if Scarsdale slows them down, that kind of takes away one of the key things that Carmel does. And like you said, I think that, Carmel's defense has been the number one rated based on points allowed. But, Scarsdale is the best at testing teams' discipline, right? They're going to see whether or not this Carmel defense is going to stay disciplined to their rules rather than playing hero ball, right? And if they can do that, if they can test them and catch them off guard, then Scarsdale can come away with some points. And that's going to be a key thing for them. Own the time of possession, catch them missing, and then capitalize on it.
Yeah, and you kind of took a little bit of my stats. You're being a little bit of a buzzkill. I go to Carmel now. Carmel's 3-0 at home. Offensively, they're the number one offense in points scored, number one against the playoff teams as well. And defensively, they're also number one in points allowed. And not just number one in AA, Mars, they're actually number one in Section 1 in points allowed. So a really pretty huge accomplishment, in my opinion, given the fact that, Carmel has now created a standard over the last couple of years of, hey, they're always going to compete. But if you look at their 3 to 4 year run, it's been pretty amazing for Carmel. And last year, winning the state title, they lost a lot of starters. I mean, let's be honest with the facts here. They had to replace a lot of veteran leadership, and they had some serious talent that came back. Obviously, you can't be where you are without talent. But a lot of kudos to the kids and to the program overall, playing at this level. With a lot of teams, usually have to take a step back when you lose that many starters from one year to the next, right? But again, pretty great accomplishment for them. But again, this is the playoffs. You just have to be the best team on this day to advance. But offensively, Mars, they've had 40-plus point games. But the last 2 weeks, Mars scored 25 and 28. So it hasn't been as high-powered scoring as they've had the last couple weeks. And what's really hurt them the last 2 weeks has been penalties and turnovers, right? So penalties and turnovers have been huge. They had 2 INTs last week, 1 in the end zone. They want to probably play a much cleaner game, right? That's got to be the aspect of the offense, is playing a cleaner game. We know the focus is running the football and relying on this offensive line and guys in Brianti and Bolin, and they shuffle some linemen as well to move bodies. And that's going to be, I think Carmel has a size advantage versus Scarsdale's front. And it's going to be up to them to try to dictate this game because they want to run the football and they want to rely on their running backs, who they have a few of them in Werlew, Rosafort, and Keating, who can do damage. And so I think obviously the focus is going to be running the football, heavy focus on that, and then the play action pass and some shots will be taken as a complement to that. And so the focus has to be on quarterback Gay as well. Again, I mentioned 2 INTs last week. Passing attack definitely wants to rebound from a shaky performance last week. It's going to be really important. And trying to get some of these receivers some one-on-one opportunities, Abel, Neri, Storin, Santiago. So it's going to be really interesting to me how this offense plays and how clean they play. Defensively, Mars, I mentioned, number 1 in points allowed in Section 1. They've allowed 7 or less points in 3 straight games. And this is going to be a big game. Again, the defensive line, linebackers, defensive backs, they swarm to the football. They rally really well. They cause a lot of penetration, negative plays. How disciplined are they with this kind of responsibility football under center action, which is some of the veer and midline option, and in the gun with some of the power read concepts, right? How are they going to bottle up Baldwin is going to be huge. And the discipline of the secondary to not blow coverages is, again, going to be really important for this defense if they want to hold off the upset of Scarsdale. Mars, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said before, the fact that Carmel is a number 1 offense and number 1 defense, and I think number 1 offense in AA and number 1 defense in Section 1 entirely. Yeah. That obviously shows how developed this program is and just how efficient they are. And I think the key thing here, though, and I do agree with you, is that Carmel does have the size advantage up front. I think the biggest thing I'm looking at here is, can the Carmel offensive line really own the trenches and almost kind of give Scarsdale like a taste of their own medicine? Can Carmel own the time of possession by, on the offensively, driving down the field and scoring points, and then from the defensive point of view, really just grinding it out and just taking the ball away in some kind of
big plays.
They need to slow up any sort of big plays. They need to play disciplined football, and if they can really force Scarsdale to get in those 3rd and longs, it's going to be, as much as they have the ability to make plays in 3rd and long, but it's a lot harder to do that, right? And it really narrows down the playbook once you get to that 3rd and long scenario. So Carmel then kind of can send the heat, or at least play some coverage and really bank on their front forward and make some plays, because they have the ability to do that. They don't have to send the stunts to really land, right? They have the ability to win up front to get there. So that's kind of the key thing.
Carmel defense works nowadays.
I know. Trust me, I do know they send the heat. I know they do. The key thing, though, is that if they send the heat, they gotta land, right? And that's kind of the key thing here.
All right, Mars, who do you got winning?
Well, listen, I think overall, when you're looking at the fact that we're talking about the first playoff game, playoff football is always the most intriguing thing, because now you're getting teams, no matter what record you have, you're 0-0 again. It's a single game elimination. And a lot of times people are going to say, well, anything can happen. And that's true. Anything can happen. But I'll just tell you, I think Carmel's going to win. I think Carmel's is the favorite for a reason. They have the most efficient offense and clearly the most efficient defense based on statistics that we see. And I think that right now, I think Scarsdale is a gritty team, and so is Carmel, right? They're both gritty teams. I think the momentum is on Carmel's side, and I just think that up front, they're playing at home. They have up front, I think they have a size advantage, and I just think defensively they're going to send the heat. And if they can just stay disciplined, then I think defensively they can hold up against this high-powered Scarsdale offense.
Let's go to the next game, Morris. Number 3 seed North Rockland, who's 4-4, is at the number 2 seed John J. East Fishkill, who's 6-1. These two teams have played a lot over the years. John J. East Fishkill 6-5 versus North Rockland. So these teams have gone back and forth, but they have won 3 straight. So really intriguing little numbers right there. We're going to get to North Rockland. I see a question come up. Did you go over South versus John Jay? No, we have not. We're on AA. Then we'll go to A. I hope you stay for the whole thing, guys. We're going to go over all the games and pick them. And if you miss anything, you can come back to this show and watch it. But let's go back to the North Rockland, John Jay's, Fishkill, Marson. Start with North Rockland. North Rockland 3-0 on the road. So pretty solid road team North Rockland has been this year. Offensively has been the kind of the inconsistency. I've talked about this over the year. They're number 10 out of 14 in points scored, which is 7 out of the 8 playoff teams. Defensively, though, number 4 out of the 14 AA schools, which is number 4 out of the playoff teams as well. But offensively, can I just say, again, I mentioned the inconsistencies. They have been getting better. They've scored 30-plus points 2 out of the last 4 weeks. But the other 2 weeks, 7 points and 7 points, right, including 7 points versus Carmel. So it's kind of been a hit or miss with this offense, you know, and that's kind of the thing that I've been bringing up. And the rhythm is obviously the most important thing for this offense. To me, it starts in the running game. They got to get the running game going. But another question I have is health. I mean, wide receiver Greg Becker, he went down late in the game last week. Such an important two-way player for them. So I don't know his status. He is so important for this team, and I hope that he plays in this game. He's a huge part of it, but other guys have to step up, right? Running back Savor, running back Vasquez, who I think is very versatile player. He's a guy who can block for you. Guys who can release out of the backfield and get that long touchdown catch versus Carmel, releasing out of the backfield. Very versatile guy. Savor is a speedster, and he's hard to tackle. These guys are going to have to be really important, but this offensive line is going to have to move bodies. John Jay's Fishkill has a really tough front 7 this season, and so moving them is going to be huge. And quarterback Italiano, another guy, dual threat guy. They rely on his legs. They rely on his arm. This is a guy who again, they put a lot on his plate. And he's going to really have to step up for them because they have some weapons. Even with Becker down, Farrar is another wide receiver who can make plays for them. But up front, Henriquez and his offensive line is going to have their hands full versus John Jay's Fishkill, who likes to bring pressure. They're strong up front. Moving them is not going to be easy, but it starts with running the football. And then the screen game, North Rockland has a bunch of different screens that they rely on, especially to the backs. Getting those backs out of the backfield and throwing it to them, I think, is going to be pretty big. They got to catch John Jay's Fishkill if they're going to stun. See if they can generate some big plays. Defensively, 4 games this season, they have allowed 16 or less points. Defense has been pretty solid overall. Last week, they forced 2 turnovers versus Carmel on INTs. Jeremiah Gillen, the big defensive lineman, has had a really strong season, but he's not alone. Linebacker Visciano, Hernandez. They've had some playmakers. We mentioned Becker in the back end and Farrar. You know, they have some guys who can make plays for you defensively, but against John Jay's Fishkill, it's all about bottling up their quarterback, who is a big-time playmaker for them. And John Jay's Fishkill does a really good job on crossers, really good job on screen game. So they're going to test the discipline of this defense. They can't just run up the field. They have to be disciplined in their keys. They have to attack their keys. And if they're going to play man coverage, they have to be aware of crossers. I mean, that's a big one for John Jay's Fishkill to try to beat man coverage. So it's going to be really important for this defense to be disciplined. I think they're going to face a lot of that. Can they hold up front? I think they have the size to, right? But it's the pass plays and some of the crossers and the screens that I'm worried about for North Rockland. Mars, what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, look at North Rockland. They've been a very tough team, similar to like what we talked about Scarsdale. Right? I feel like they've been kind of consistent, especially on their defensive end, to really cause a lot of disruption, whether it's turning the ball over or causing turnovers or just playing tough on the run. I think offensively, they also have a lot of weapons that can make some big plays, but like you said, it's been a little bit challenging for them in the recent weeks, especially with some injuries that could possibly come up to slow their offense down. So I really think the key thing for them is really going to be whether or not the offensive line can stand up against John Jay's Fishkill's front 7, as well as their offensive line too, because they just have size. I mean, John Jay's Fishkill's kind of returning back to that.
Well, they're
massive,
not like that. They're not. I'm going to just say, when you say size, they're not like 6'5".
They're thick dudes.
But they're thick. Yeah,
they're big. I mean, John Jay's Fishkill, and I mean, back when we both played, I mean, I think maybe your years they were towering guys. When I played against John Jay's Fishkill, they weren't tall dudes. They were just big bodies, right? So it's almost like my year when we used to play against them. So it's like they're bigger kids and they're hard to move, right? And I think that's the key thing, is that whether or not North Rockland's front guys of the offensive line or defensive line, can they win the trenches? I mean, that's going to be the big question I'm looking at here.
Yeah, I agree with you. John Jay's Fishkill, when we moved to them, Mars 4-0 at home. So a good road team versus a good home team in East Fishkill. Offensively, the number 3 offense in points scored, which is number 3 out of the 8 playoff teams. Defensively, number 2 in AA, and number 2 among the playoff teams. This has been a pretty consistent football team. Offensively, obviously, I mentioned it before. Feliciano is really the engine of this offense. They put a lot on him running the ball and throwing it. He had 2 touchdowns last week, 1 rushing and 1 passing. The week prior, Mars, 260 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. So this is a guy, again, will they ask him to throw a little bit more? Will they ask him to run a little bit more? We'll go week to week. But there's no question about it. This is the man of that offense, right? And also, this offensive line does deserve a lot of credit. This has been a strong rushing team, and it's because that offensive line is helping move people. So don't forget to give them credit. But they also have some other guys who I think are going to have to step up this week. Guys like Noah Crouch, he had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. Been another consistent guy, a guy you could throw out of the backfield as well and catch balls. Rossi's been another guy who stepped up. Nick Bias had a receiving touchdown last week. But again, Feliciano is obviously the engine of this offense, doing a lot of power read stuff, doing some quarterback blast action, and then getting him on rollouts, throwing some throwbacks, throwing some deep patterns to some of their receivers is obviously going to be what their identity is. And the screen game, right? We talk about John Jay's Fishkill. We talk about the screen game. Strong screen game. North Rockland likes to be aggressive. They will send linebackers. They will send guys off the edge. They will give you 5-man and 4-man fronts. You know, when you get those 5-man bear fronts, can you take advantage passing the ball? And I think that's exactly what East Fishkill wants, to catch North Rockland being overly aggressive and throw behind it. I think that's kind of the game plan, but they're going to need this offensive line to be aware of the different stunts and guys coming off the edge or coming internally and block that up, right? And they don't want to give up sacks, put them behind the chains. Defensively, Mars, listen, they have 4 shutouts this season, Mars, which leads to AA schools. This is a defense that really can then put the clamps on you, and it starts with stopping the run. Their defensive front 7 with Vanderstuff, their linebacker, with Martini, with Maselli, Torres, Macia, Winters. I mean, they've had guys who've made a lot of plays. Crouch is another one. They have multiple guys who can step up and make plays for you on the defensive side of the ball. Feliciano doesn't just play quarterback. He also plays defense, and he's been a pretty darn good defensive player at times as well. Connor Finn, he's a guy you've now heard for a couple weeks make plays. He had 2 pass deflections last week. They have some guys who can really clamp things down for you, and they don't make it easy on you. So this offense for North Rockland, again, how they're going to attack it, they like to spread you out to run it. They're going to use their running backs and quarterbacks. They're going to do some read stuff. They're going to do some power read concepts. Again, got to be disciplined in the front 7 on who your guy is, because a guy like Savor for North Rockland, if he gets out to the second level, there's not a lot of guys who can catch him. All right, so North Rockland can generate those big plays. Got to make sure you keep everything in the box and out from the edge. So I do think North Rockland, because of the strength that John Jay's Fishkill has in their front 7, is going to want to get out on the edge. Mars, what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at John Jay's Fishkill, they're going to be trying to make some big plays on the outside. I think Feliciano is definitely a top tier weapon, playing both he's playing quarterback, but he can just run the ball and throw the ball very effectively. And I think he's going to be like you said before, he's the main cog of this offense. But it's not just him. You have a lot of guys who can make a lot of plays. But I think the offensive line is just been doing a great job of just opening up lanes for all these guys who are trying to run the ball, right? I think that defensively is really where I'm more impressed with them, because of the fact that they are, number 2 in entire AA right now. And I think that's really impressive, because the fact is they send a lot of heat, they win up front, and they just always land on whenever they send the stunts, right? I think that's kind of the key thing here. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, but I do know that John Jay's Fishkill is going to send the heat, and they're going to try to bank on their secondary making some big plays and causing some turnovers.
Yeah. And when I look at keys of the game, keys to victory here, I'm going to still focus on kind of the upset, Mars. What does North Rockland have to do? I do think they have to hit on 2 or 3 20-plus yard pass plays. I think it's not going to be easy running the ball consistently versus John Jay. So North Rockland's going to have to hit on a couple big pass plays in this game to generate either some points or to turn, to get some chunk plays to get the offense going. And on the other side, can they hold Feliciano? My over-under, Mars, for Feliciano, 250 total yards. They have to hold them under to 250 total passing and running together if they're going to have a chance to win this game, in my opinion. And so that's going to be the big one. Now, Mars, I'm going to pick this game here, and then I'll get your pick. I think that this game could be probably the most interesting one of this weekend. And I actually am going to go with John Jay East Fishkill. I know that they still have some youth on this team, but I do think these teams are pretty even. And so I'm going to give the edge to the home team and to John Jay East Fishkill's offense has been a little bit more consistent than North Rockland. Both defenses have been strong at times. John Jay East Fishkill has been a little bit more impressive, but two strong defenses. I'm going to go with the more consistent offense, and that's John Jay. I'm going John Jay.
You know, the biggest thing I'm looking at, and I think you kind of nailed it on the head about the defenses. If both defenses are near on the same level, then you got to go with the offense. I'm going to do the same thing. I think John Jay East Fishkill is going to win this game. I think their offense has too many weapons. They make big plays. The defense is going to, force a lot of tough job for North Rockland. Really have to make a comeback here. I'm going to go John Jay East Fishkill.
I do see question, Thomas Russo, Edgemont versus Panis. Yeah, we are going to get to that. We haven't broken that game down yet. We're on the AA, and then we'll make our move over to AB Hudson Valley Football League. All right, so
and plus, guys, make sure you hit the thumbs up and subscribe for more future content, and go tell your friends, go tell your boys to drop by and drop a thumbs up and subscribe as well.
Well, and watch this. Don't just drop it, right?
Yeah, of course. But just saying, tell your boys to come watch as well, and come drop that thumbs that subscribe to come help the channel out.
Absolutely. Let's go to the next AA game, Mars. Number 4 seed Mount Vernon 4-3 at the number 1 seed Mamaroneck 7-0. And let's start with Mount Vernon, who's 2-2 on the road. Offensively, number 10 offense out of the 14 schools in points scored, which is number 8 out of the 8 playoff teams. Defensively, they're number 9 out of 14, which is number 8 out of 8 as well. Before we get into the offense defense, you got to give a lot of kudos to Mount Vernon. I mean, when was the last time Mount Vernon was in the AA playoffs? So I think big kudos to the players, to the coaching staff. They've had a strong season, Mars. No matter what happens in this game, you have to be happy if you're Mount Vernon on where the program has been to where it is right now. Deserves a lot of credit to that staff. And to the kids. But let's go to the offense, Mars. And going up against Mamaroneck, the number 1 seed on the road, you're going to need to hit some big plays. I do think, again, they're the number 8 offense out of the 8 playoff teams in points scored. So what do you have to do against Mamaroneck, who has been really strong defensively, is I think they're going to have to hit on some big pass plays. At times, Mamaroneck has given up some big pass plays. I think they've given up more big pass plays than run plays. And so throwing the ball is going to actually be pretty big. Now, last week, Dwight Finley stepped in at the quarterback spot for Mount Vernon. He had 3 touchdowns. He really did step up. I don't know what Didier, what his status is at the quarterback spot. Not sure if he's injured or anything like that. Don't know that. But Finley stepped in and made plays. He had a rushing touchdown. I think it was 2 passing touchdowns. But 3 touchdowns total. Boyd had a receiving touchdown. I think getting a guy like Jaden Hamilton involved, Mars, both running the football and receiving, he did that last week. They got to continue to do that. I think he is one of their most dynamic players. And for them to pull off this upset, he's going to have to get some touches here in the receiving game as well, especially out of the backfield. They got to try to get him on one-on-one matchups where he can use his speed in space. And how is this offensive line going to handle the defensive front 7 of Mamaroneck is going to be really important. I mentioned throwing the ball, I think, is where they're going to get the most out of their offense. But this offensive line's got to pass protect, right? So that's going to be another big thing. Defensively, listen, there's been 2 games that they've allowed less than 8 points. But 2 out of the last 3 games, they have given up 31-plus points more. So they've had some strong performances defensively this year, but 2 out of the last 3 games, they've been pretty leaky. And so this defensive line and linebackers, how are they going to play some of the zone concepts, some of the RPO concepts, and power read concepts that Mamaroneck does, spreading you out and creating space? And I think Mamaroneck really is going to try to run the football and get out on the edge and then hit you with some of that RPO and play action stuff. So how is this defense going to react? We know this defense can be aggressive. They also like to send linebackers to try to generate some negative plays. They're going to have to rely on the secondary that has some speed and have forced turnovers throughout the season with INTs and some big ones for touchdowns. This secondary is going to have to man up against some of these Mamaroneck receivers, and they're going to have to make plays one-on-one. Mark, thoughts on Mount Vernon?
Yeah, you look at Mount Vernon, like you said before, you have to give them a lot of credit. I mean, this is definitely a big move for them to show really how much growth they've had in these last few years. And I think the key thing here is that they have to give a lot of props to the kids, to the coaching staff, to just the program in general. But yeah, I think the offense needs to make a lot of big plays here to really stand up against Mamo, because defensively they're very tough to really score points against. I think a lot of it has to also do with the front. The Mamo's front's really tough to really move against. and to even get passes, and keeping the pocket. So Mount Vernon needs to really set that pocket, really create that bubble, and allow them to try to make some big pass plays to really keep them, push them back a little bit, because I think that's going to be the key thing. At least will open up more plays in their playbook. And defensively, going against Bama is going to be really tough to really slow down this high-powered offense. I mean, it's really going to be about slowing down or containing, this massive, I guess, two-headed dragon we have at the quarterback running back position that can really just run in many different directions. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Mount Vernon really can slow them down, but it's going to be really a priority to keep the edge and keep the contain.
Yeah, absolutely. And look for guys like Nazir John on the defensive side of the ball to make big plays for them. Let's go to Mamaroneck, Mars. I mean, they just completed their first undefeated regular season in 44 years. I think what I saw online. Tremendous, successful season for Mamaroneck, pretty historic. And again, that's really big time for the kids and for the coaching staff there. Both deserve a lot of credit over at Mamaroneck. And offensively, Mars, this is the number 2 offense out of the 14 AA schools, number 2 amongst the playoff teams. They have been really balanced and really potent. They have 6 30-plus point games this season. And quarterback Cox has helped lead that way. 10 of 14, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 118 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns last week. Over 300 total yards. Really dynamic player, both with his arm and his legs. Slippery guy. I mean, this is a guy who can really, when plays break down, can make huge plays for you, but he has some weapons as well. I mean, Sam Bone, he had 3 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown. Rhett Chambers has been a real reliable player for them as a receiver in big key moments, so you could find him and throw him the football. Glinsky also had 3 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. They also have a stud running back in Hamilton. 13 carries, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just been an absolute workhorse running the football at the running back position. Again, they do some zone read stuff. They do some power read concepts and RPO. I mean, that's their identity, and they'll hit you with play action, which will, again, that's where they can hit some of the big shots for these receivers. But, Mars, who deserves a lot of this credit too, they don't get talked about enough, this offensive line. And this offensive line, I know we haven't done a Hog Molly reports all season, but to me, Mamaroneck is up there in the top 5 offensive lines that we've seen play so far, definitely for AA at least, right? So guys like Colin, Bennett, this offensive line has done a really strong job and has allowed this offense to be balanced and to hit big plays. Defensively, they've had 4 games of 7 or less points. Last week, Nico Obregon had an INT. We know guys like Alker, Glinsky, Alvarado had made big plays in the secondary, and this defense had 4 sacks last week. So this defensive front, keeping Mount Vernon's speed inside the tackle box is going to be extremely important. And some of these guys in the secondary at times have given up big plays, but they've also forced turnovers. The secondary is going to be matched up against a lot of speed in Mount Vernon. Can they win that matchup? Right? Can they win the matchup? Can they keep everything in the box? Don't allow big plays from Mount Vernon. We know about this defensive line and this linebacking core, guys like Ramsey. This is a pretty well-rounded defense, Mars. I mentioned number 3 out of 14 schools in AA. Thoughts on Mamaroneck?
Yeah, I mean, look at Mamaroneck. They've been very efficient, and they're on track to meet your bet that you made at the beginning of the year, which was being a top 4 offense in Section 1 AA. And I think that
top 2. I thought.
Did you say top 2 or top 4? I can't remember, but I do.
But if they're top 2, they're number 2 right now at the regular playoffs. I'm right.
If they're top 2, then yeah, that's even more of an impressive bet.
I hit that, man.
That is more of an impressive bet for sure. But I think their offense has just been lethal, right? I mean, on the rush offense, they've just been carving kids up, and I think the offensive line has been just super impressive. and just moving bodies around and just creating lanes for their playmakers. And they just feel like they can just do it all. Right? I mean, they're scoring 30, like average wise, up there. But like you said, 5 30-point games.
6. Yeah. 6 30-plus points.
Yeah, 6 30-point games. I mean, that's just impressive for a high school football team. And the thing is that I think it has a lot to do with the offensive line, but defensively, they've just been kind of wearing teams down and just getting their offense back on the field, which then once they get on the field, they just get the momentum and they start carving you up piece by piece all the way down the field. I think Mammo is a very dangerous team in this playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of my keys right here is the turnovers are going to be huge. I think Mount Vernon needs turnovers. They feed off of turnovers. If Mary can play a clean game, I think they have a very good chance of avoiding an upset. Mars, let's pick the game. I mean, do you see an upset happening here, Mount Vernon? First time in the playoffs in a long time. Mamaroneck, off the high of being undefeated, I don't think the upset happens. I think Mamaroneck plays a clean enough game. They're at home. That mix of their defense offense being top 3 in both categories, I think they run the football pretty effectively, especially out, running with some power. Some of the play action will hit home. Have to be careful with those turnovers, but I'm going to go with Mamaroneck. I think Mamaroneck wins. I don't remember the last time they won a playoff game, but I think it's been a couple years. But man, I think Mamaroneck is a good football team, and I think they win this game.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think Mamaroneck has a lot of ability to go deep into this playoffs, and I think it has a lot to do with how efficient their offense is, but just how stout their defense is, just being really causing a lot of mayhem up front. I think Mamaroneck's going to win here because of the fact they just have a lot of weapons on offense. They're going to control the time of possession. They're going to just run and carve up people, and I think that's going to be the key thing for them. They're just going to, I think, dominate up front as well. The offensive line for Mamaroneck has just been lethal. I'm going to go with them here.
I agree. Let's go to the last AA matchup, Mars. Number 3 seed, New Rochelle, 5-3 at number 2 seed, Arlington, who's also 5-3. And New Rochelle is 3-2 versus Arlington, but this is a rematch of last year's semifinals where Arlington won in New Rochelle. Now, this is at Arlington this time. New Rochelle 2-2 on the road this year, Mars. Offensively, there's number 7 ranked offense and points scored, which is 6th among the 8 playoff teams. Defensively, they're number 8 in points allowed, which is number 7 amongst the 8 playoff teams. And I'm going to start with New Rochelle. Offensively, Mars, they have had 4 games straight. These last 4 games where they've scored 25 plus points. And this offense really feeds on big plays, so big chunk plays, using their speed both in the pass game and in the run game. And I think that's going to be really key for them this week. I do think Arlington, again, has a size advantage versus New Rochelle, but I think New Rochelle has a speed advantage, and they need to take advantage of that. Guys like Raiden Davis, their running back, Mars, 166 yards last week and 2 touchdowns, had a huge chunk run play. Quarterback Luzzy, 9 of 11. That's what you want to see. 9 of 11, 211 yards, 2 touchdowns, super efficient. Dawson is a guy who has really exploded these last couple weeks as a wide receiver, also on some jet sweep action. He had 6 catches, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, also 79 yards rushing and a touchdown. Big play threat, right? And you can see they have big play guys who can make big plays for you. And Luzzy, to me, is going to be so important in this game. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the class, and he's going to have to play like it if they're going to upset Arlington. He's going to have to make some big plays in the passing game. I do think New Rochelle has to attack the edge of Arlington's defense and win these one-on-one battles with these receivers versus the secondary, because inside the tackle box, it's going to be hard to move them. Now, what they have to also do is stretch Arlington out. So they can run inside, but it's got to be on some stretch plays where they get Arlington running east and west, Mars, to give these backs, these speed guys, opportunities to make cuts and to give them lanes. Because if they're not going to bump and grind with Arlington. They're not going to do it. And this offensive line has to pass protect, because Arlington can get after the quarterback with their size. And so big opportunity for New Rochelle's offense has to be predicated, to me, getting out on the edge, whether it's throwing the ball or running it, and protecting Luzzy is going to be so key in this one. Defensively, the ability to stop the run obviously is going to be really important. Arlington the last few weeks have been dominating running the football. And this defensive front 7 is going to be a huge test. I mean, they've had 3 games this season where they have allowed 8 or less points, but they've also had 3 games this season where they have allowed over 30 points, Mars. And the last 2 games, 28 plus points allowed. So, New Rochelle, the defensively, they have to play better, right? They have to, it's got to be the one that, plays closer to allowing 8 or less points compared to the other one, because I don't think getting into a big scoring match with them, especially with Arlington's style, which is running the football, which they're going to control time of possession. You're going to get less possessions if they have the ball that long. So it's going to be really important that they try to create some negative plays. And it's stopping that power run when they come with the eye, and how they handle power read is going to be huge, because Mars, New Rochelle at times have struggled against dual threat quarterbacks. The Scarsdale's quarterback, at times he's Fishkill's quarterback, Mamaroneck's quarterback, quarterbacks who can kind of run and throw, have given them fits at times. And now here comes Resigno, right, who can do that. So interesting one on that, Mars. What are your thoughts on New Rochelle? I actually have an offensive breakdown I'll want to show the group.
Yeah, so I mean, we look at New Rochelle. I do agree with you that I think the key thing for them is that they have speed, and they definitely need to utilize that. Get outside, break contain, because like you said, trying to run inside against Arlington is going to be extremely tough because Arlington has the size advantage, right? I think this is going to be a big game for New Rochelle's offensive line because they need to step up. They need to show out, and this needs to be the best game of the season for them. I think up front, they need to be as efficient as possible and create some lanes for these really great skill players that New Rochelle has. And they have a lot of guys who can make big plays. Once they get in the open, once they break to that second level, they can really, burn some kids. So I think the key thing is they need to give their skill players some open opportunity, but they need to protect Luzzy. Luzzy's the key to this offense. If he's upright and he's moving around, I think he can make some big plays, especially when he can just throw the ball as effectively as he does. And defensively, they need to really step it up, especially on the run, because Arlington's going to try to run you over, and you're going to have to send the heat. You're going to have to slow them down, and at least cause it, like you said before, cause some negative plays, or really put Arlington in a tough spot where they have to throw the ball for that first down. And, it's going to be tough, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, it is. And I kind of want to just show a couple clips of New Rochelle's offense. And let me allow to share my screen. Let me know if I can share it, Mars.
Oh, hold on. I got you. All right, you're good now.
All right, let me just pull this guy up. And let me make sure everything's good. I do see a question while this loads up. If Mamaroneck and South played, who do you think would win? That's a really, really good question. Appreciate that one. Hi, hello, bye. Appreciate that question. They actually have really similar makeups to each other. That would be a very interesting game. If I had to pick, I might say South by a smidge. But I think both are very, very even. Both have very similar makeups. I think Mamaroneck runs the ball a little bit better than South. I think South throws the ball a little bit better. Love both quarterbacks. I think South has some serious dynamic wide receivers. Yeah. But Mamaroneck might have a slight edge on the O-line. So we'll see. But I would say South by a smidge if I had to pick right now. But here we go. Let's talk about New Rochelle's offense. And listen, this offense is a big play offense. They want to generate some big plays. They want to get some one-on-one opportunities. And this first play, again, the pass attack is going to be key in this one. You can see they have a tight end, 2 receivers, single receiver this side. They have a back. Look how wide the back is. So it's going to be pretty obvious that they're throwing the ball. There's not really a lot of run plays where the running back is that wide. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're actually going to roll out to the quarterback's left. And you're going to see a post wheel concept. And you don't see a safety, right? He's a little bit off the screen, but you're going to see this defense is going to be kind of in quarter coverage here where you got a flat defender, you got an outside third defender by the corner, and this safety he's going to have he's going to steal in breaking routes, right? So with this guy doing a wheel, he's going to steal this post. It's actually pretty good coverage for this route combination, right? But when you have a perfect throws can beat good coverage. And so Luzzy rolls out to his left. I love that he resets his feet. And you don't see the corner. He's going to break off the post and go out to the wheel. And this is actually pretty good coverage on the wheel from the flat defender, right? But Luzzy's throwing this anyway. So people would say this is pretty ill-advised, right? Mars, look at this. Look at the corner right here. He's making that break on that outside route. But look at the throw here. I mean, the perfect throw can't be defended. And look at where it's dropped in the bucket. I mean, this receiver with his speed gets a step on that corner breaking out and the flat defender. And with the perfect throw, hitting him in stride generates this long touchdown. And they're going to have to throw some tight window. That's why I mentioned about Luzzy. He's going to have to throw some tight window throws. You don't want ill-advised throws, but tight window throws here. And so that's kind of a rollout pass. Now, play action pass is going to be another key one. And you're going to see this time 2 backs. They have 1 receiver this way, 2 receivers near side. And they're going to run a stop and go. You're going to give a heavy run fake. They're going to pull a guard. They're going to have the H-back go across, fake a run here. And I want you to focus on this stop and go because that's where they're going with it. Again, stop and go is a long route, so you got to buy time. Defensive lineman gets penetration. He actually falls down. Quarterback feels that. He's going to roll again to his left. Again, there's the stop and go. Again, pretty good coverage, Mars. I mean, you look at this. He's hip to hip with him. Pretty good coverage, but this is what I talk about those skill guys, winning one-on-one battles. And they're going to have to. Throw here, but look at him go up and snag this ball out of the air, winning that one-on-one battle through contact. If you want to pull off upsets, you need your big playmakers to make plays like this, winning those 50-50 battles. It's not going to be that clean. They're not going to be running wide open. You got to win those 50-50 battles if New Rochelle wants to win. So passing attack, whether it's rollouts, whether it's play action pass, is going to be huge. And running the football, right? When you can throw it, now you get looser boxes where you can run the ball. And so, again, you're going to see an H-back here. You got 2 receivers near side, single receiver. They're going to pull a guard, try to kick out the end with the H-back. But this is what I like. Look at the movement right here. Look at the movement. They get a little kick out, but it's creating those lanes, right? Getting the defense to go east and west, Mars, I mentioned it, giving these guys cutback lanes. And when he gets a cutback lane like that, there's not many people going to catch him, right? So attack, throwing the football, whether it's rollouts, whether it's play action, and now getting some looser boxes, you can run the football and get these guys some lanes. You want to get them going east and west, Mars, is going to be extremely important in this one. Let's go to Arlington. And yeah, no problem, man. Keep sending those questions in, guys. We appreciate you. Let's go to Arlington. Arlington 3-0 at home, Mars. They've been a really strong home team. Offensively, number 4 in points scored, which is 4th amongst the 8 playoff teams. Defensively, 7th, which is 6th among the 8 playoff teams. Offensively, 3 straight 30-plus point games. 2 out of the last 3 games, Mars, they've scored 40-plus points. This rush attack has been extremely potent. They've rushed for over 250 yards in 3 straight games. Running back Chaffee, and I hope I keep saying his name right because I like change it every other week. I feel bad. I heard one of the announcers call it that, so maybe I'm the wrong one. But he rushed for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Lynch is another guy who's been really, really strong for them. 98 yards rushing and a touchdown. Whereas Signo didn't have his best passing game last week. Look for him to bounce back. 6 of 17 passing for a touchdown INT last week. He usually bounces back for the following week. They didn't run him a lot. Expect to see him with some more designed runs, right, to get him more involved in the game. And I mentioned Urshel at times have struggled stopping dual threat quarterbacks. So I'm interested to see how Resigno bounces back and try to hit some big plays with these receivers. But it all starts with running the football. That was their formula to beat Urshel last year, is to overpower them. I think they still have that makeup to do that again this season, right? And if they don't turn the ball over, do they control the time of possession? Defensively, stopping big plays. I talked about it with New Rochelle. Can they generate some pressure? Last week, Lavello had an INT. Price was very active on the defensive line with 9 tackles. We know McGann, very strong defender for them. They got to be smart. Again, when they're on these outside runs, they have to be disciplined in their run fits. Even on the backside, they can't give lanes to these New Rochelle players, Mars. They can hit huge plays for you. Thoughts on Arlington before we pick the game?
Yeah, I mean, Arlington has definitely been playing a lot better the last few weeks. And a lot of it has to do with the rush offense, and especially their offensive line play has just been moving bodies around and just creating lanes for their skill players. I mean, Resigno's had a tough game last week, but I do agree with you. He never really has 2 bad games in a row. I think he'll be fine. I think the offensive line is definitely going to really help this offense continually, dominate up front. But I think it really has to also do with their defense. They need to keep contained here because, like you showed in the video, their show can make some big plays if you get them in the space, right? And I think that's going to be the key thing that Arlington is going to look for to really slow down or stop.
All right, Mars, I'm picking this game right here. I think this game, if there is going to be, I say an upset alert, I think this one might be it with New Rochelle trying to get revenge, but I am still going to go with Arlington. Being at home, running the football the way they have, I think they can dictate and control this game, and it's going to give New Rochelle less possessions, and that's going to be extremely important in this one. I do think New Rochelle will hit on some big plays, but Arlington will control the game by running the football. They will hit home on some of the red zone attempts. And New Rochelle has at times had issues with turnovers on offense, where they have gotten drives going, but they have coughed the ball up, whether it's fumbles or INTs, which will hurt them. I'm going to go with Arlington.
I was really tough trying to make a decision on this game because of the fact that you have, Arlington and New Rochelle are really not that far off. And I think I think they're just 2 different types of teams. I think Arlington is that power run scheme, but they could do a lot more as well. But New Rochelle is kind of the speedy group. But, I'm going to go with New Rochelle in this one. I think I'm going to go with the upset. I think New Rochelle, for me, this is a tough game to pick. I think I would be surprised if Arlington won because they can just drain the clock, like you said. But I think New Rochelle, when playoff time comes around, New Rochelle gets a new found energy behind them. And I think New Rochelle is going to try to get to the outside. It's going to be a really close game. I think Luzzie's going to have a big day, and I think that's what's going to give them kind of a push to win this game in the end. I'm going to go with New Rochelle.
All right, so let's move to John Jay Cross River, the 4 seed, 3-4 at number 1 seed Clarkstown South, who's 6-1. These teams only played twice since 2004. They're 1-1. They split the series. Last time they played was 2009, where John Jay Cross River won. And let's start with John Jay Cross River. I mean, listen, they had to back into the playoffs, right? With winning the tiebreaker over Eastchester. They were in a bye last week. So they're coming off a bye. But if you look at them on the road, Mars, 0-3 on the road. And I talked about this a couple weeks back. They play much better at home than on the road. So this is going to be a huge test to go on the road here at the number 1 seed, Clarkstown South. Offensively, we know that they can move the ball and put up points. This is the number 6 offense out of the 15 schools in A, number 6 out of the 8 schools in A. Defensively, number 10 out of 15, which is 8th out of the 8 playoff teams in points allowed. And let's start with the offense. I mean, they've had 3 games with scoring over 34 points. They have 34 points, 2 straight of over 34 points. They've had 5 games where they've scored 26 or more. I mean, they can move the ball. They have weapons. At times, the offensive line has played well, but they have run into issues. And it's that inconsistency on the offensive line that has hurt them, but also turnovers have hurt them. I mean, this is a very high-powered offense that at times have had killer turnovers that have buried them. And they had 2 INTs their last game versus Mayapack. One of them was for a touchdown, and one of them was to end the game, right? So key turnovers are another thing that have crippled their momentum. But this is an offense that has a lot of weapons. And to me, it starts with their running back, Shapiro. I mean, he has been absolutely tremendous this year, and I think deserves votes, at least definitely an A for Offensive Player of the Year. He's been dynamic. And when they played Mayapack, 294 yards rushing, Mars, and 4 touchdowns. He also had 3 catches for 25 yards. He had over 300 yards of offense, and he has been that bell cow for them the whole season. They also have quarterback Galea, who, is another big-bodied quarterback who can sling it, especially when he has time. And that's going to be the key thing for this offense, is giving pass protection for their quarterback. They have weapons like Shapiro. I mentioned Zaccanino, DiChiara. They also have much more than just those guys. But they just have a dynamic group that if you get the ball in their hands and one-on-one opportunities, they can make you pay. And it's hard to slow down this offense. But John Jay against South, I don't think is going to be running the ball between the tackles much, but getting out on the edge is going to be really important. Getting Shapiro on some of those stretch plays is going to be really important. But they cannot shoot themselves in the foot like they've been doing, Mars. They can't do it offensively. And defensively, that's kind of the biggest question. I think more so than the offense, obviously, is the defense. And they kind of got to look at what Rye did versus South, or to kind of get an idea of how you can slow them down. Now, they didn't shut them down, right? They exploded in that fourth quarter, but what did they do in the first 3 quarters that kind of worked? And what they did do is generate pressure. You have to generate pressure on Clarkstown South. They like to pass the ball. You got to get the quarterback off his spot. You got to keep him in the pocket. John Jay Cross River likes to send their linebackers because they're not overly huge up front, so they like to bring pressure. They're going to need to, right? They cannot allow Clarkstown South to sit in the pocket. Also interested to see, does South kind of run the ball with some more power, or do they just stay true to who they are, which is slinging the rock? They also, I think Cross River has to roll their coverage to Chris Ali, especially if Ali and Fatera are on the same side. Now, if they're split, that's going to be the more difficult thing. What do you do versus them when they're split on opposite sides? But again, they've allowed 3 30-plus point games, Mars. They allowed 48 points last game they played. So this defense is really going to have to step up. They're going to pull up this upset, Mars. Thoughts on Cross River?
Yeah, I think Cross River's offense has been really very efficient. I mean, they've been scoring a lot of points the last few games, and all season long, they've been very good. I think, guy like Shapiro as being a top-level player in this, this season, but
he's a college player. I'm just going to make that. I know there's talk out there. He's not a very big guy, but this is a guy who can play at the next level. I just want to say that before you keep going.
I mean, I don't know people out there saying that he can't play in college. I mean, this guy's got some very good ability, and I mean, I don't understand that one. But if that's the case, I'm sure that he's gonna put that on like some sort of his locker or whatever it is to have that out there.
Comment, yeah.
No, I know. I'm just saying, if that were the case, I think that would be one of the driving forces for him to be like, okay, you don't think I'm a college level player? Then I'm going to show you I'm a college level player. And I think the biggest thing for him is that, biggest thing for this offense is that they struggle with turning the ball over. Like you said, I feel like every game it's something, right? And I think last game against, the last time they played was with Mayapack. It was a tough one because they like you said, they had a pick. It was a turnover for a touchdown, and then they had turnover at the end of the game, which was obviously pretty bad for that. And then on top of that, defensively, they need to really close down the amount of points they give up. They need to slow down the bleeding, not open up the wound, right? That's kind of the key thing defensively. They have to really cover it up, try to at least slow down these big plays, right? And give their offense more ability to get back on the field and get some more points.
Yeah. Looking at Clarkstown South, Mart, they are 3-0 at home. Offensively, number 2 offense out of the 15 schools in A, and defensively number 4, right? So pretty strong on both sides of the ball, but offensively, man, 3 40-plus point games this year, Mars, 6 games of 30-plus points. So this offense can really move the football and put up points. But this offense also likes to go east and west, which is kind of beneficial for Cross River, who has a lot of speed. They don't have a lot of size. So I'm interested to see how South plays them, right? Do they try to run the ball more than usual? Or do they just stay true to what they want to do, which is they want to sling the ball, right? They want to hit some big plays in the passing game, whether it's some quick hitters or take some deep and intermediate shots and get those playmakers out on the edge. Or do they try to run a little bit more with some power running game? I'm interested to see, but Holder has been really good for them. Last week, Mars, 14 of 17, 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. Really, really good quarterback. And if they can hold him upright, I think he can have a dynamic day. I mean, he has the weapons. Chris Ali, he had a touchdown. Fatera, he had a strong game, 3 catches, 54 yards and a touchdown. They have some other receivers that can also make big plays for them, but those are the 2 big names out there. But also Jake Keir, 53 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. He's another guy who I'm interested to see if they run downhill with him. Could have a big game, trying to push around John Jay Cross River and control the ball. And Butler is another guy. He had 8 carries, 39 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Interested to see what they do here because they have the weapons to both run the ball and throw it. So very interesting, but this offensive line is going to have to step up. They were missing Ryan again for the 2nd straight week. And, losing that kind of player is tough. And again, don't know his status. But if he's not going to be there, you need this offensive line to step up. And I thought they did better last week up front. But again, this is a step up, right? So this is playoff football. You got to hold up and pass, bro. They have some guys still on that offensive line who can make plays for you. And I do think if they hold up, I think they can have a big day. Defensively, this is a defense that at times can be dominant, right? But 47 points the last 2 weeks combined. Really strong in the first half last week. So at times they've been a little bit leaky, but at times they've been absolutely dominant. And what they do is they force an INT last week. They can really force turnovers on you, create some negative plays. They got to slow down Shapiro. That's obviously going to be the number one priority. Is all eyes have to be on Shapiro. You cannot let him get loose. Cannot let him go Super Saiyan like he has pretty much all season long. Is going to be the key for this defense. And can they generate pressure, which teams have been able to do on Galea? That's going to be huge for them. When you generate pressure on them, that's where the mistakes happen. That's where the turnovers happen. And if the Clarkstown South can get a couple extra possessions, they're going to win this football game. Thoughts on South, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like when you look at South, they do have a top level offense in 1A, and defensively they're no slouch either. Top 5 in A as well. I think the biggest thing for them is that offensively they're trying to get to the outside. And it's actually a very good point you brought up there, Frank, about they in Cross River kind of have a similar kind of offensive or just a skill base where they have the speed to get to the outside. And it's going to be interesting, like you said, how are they going to adapt offensively? Because I think their front definitely has the advantage between the 2 teams. But the question is going to be whether or not they're going to try to maybe run them over, play some more power football, or maybe they just want to stay and do what they normally do and just pass the rock. Like at the end of the day, they have a lot of ability. They have a lot of things that they could try out. I think the offensive line is going to be the key factor, though, right? How they play and how they kind of navigate is going to be really how this offense moves. And defensively, they can be dominant, but they got to be efficient. They got to force turnovers, get their offense back the ball, and keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mars, let's pick the game. And again, a very interesting game. What Cross River has to do to pull off the upset, I mentioned before. And can they do it on the road at South? I don't think it happens. I'm going to go with Clarkstown South. I think Clarkstown South, again, besides having that 3-quarter hiccup versus Rye, they've been playing really good football. And I think offensively, they can move the ball if they get some pass protection. I think they can hit some big plays on John Jay. I do think John Jay will move the ball as well. I do feel this will be a higher scoring game. But I think Clarkstown South's been much more efficient defensively. And I do think they'll force a couple turnovers, and that'll be the difference in this one. I'm going to go with South.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to go with South as well. I think that John Jay's defense, they struggle. And I think that obviously South has a high-powered offense that can make a lot of plays. I think that South defense also has the ability to try to, at least slow down with John Jay's, is what they're going to try to do. I think they just have more ability on offense to kind of mix and match different types of play calling. I'm going to go with South.
Yeah, and looking again, I appreciate you guys for tuning into the show. We're going through the A playoff games, and then we're going to jump to B and the Hudson Valley Football League, and then pick the CD games. I mentioned a question about Rye. We're actually going to talk about Rye next, coming up right now. And I have a question: who would win if South and Somers played? If I had to pick right now, I actually, before the season, Mars, do you remember who I picked was going to be in the championship?
I think you picked Somers
and South.
Yeah, Somers.
Right, so my dream
South
is still alive right now. Obviously, first week in the playoffs. But if I had to pick right now, I would say Somers. Question: Byram. Yes, we're going to get to Byram once we get to B. Hope you guys stay for the show. Make sure to give that thumbs up and subscribe, guys. And if you want to donate, obviously the description is in the description below. But hope you guys stay for the entire show. You guys can obviously rewatch the show, but let's keep going, Mars, to the final A game. And what am I saying? The final A game. This is the second A game on that side of the bracket. We have number 3 seed Rye at number 2 seed Pelham. And Rye is actually 8-0 versus Pelham. They won last year 24-13. And let's start with Rye. Rye is 5-0 on the road. Offensively, number 7 out of the 15 schools in points scored, which is 7 out of the 8 playoff teams. And defensively, they're number 3, which is 3 out of the 8 A playoff teams. And when I look at offensively, they're dealing with injuries now, especially to the skill spot, which has kind of morphed this offense a little bit into more of a power running and play action team. Now, what I liked about Rye was that they were multiple, but they've had to kind of adjust based on some of the injuries that they faced into kind of running the ball. And what's helped is that this offensive line has really stepped up and has played well for them. And obviously the big thing is blocking a guy like Luke Green, but Pelham has a couple other defensive linemen, and they like to send their linebackers. They want to generate negative plays. So this offensive line really is going to be tested, but I like the way that they've been playing. And they've had to rely on a veteran like Richardson, who had 192 yards, 3 touchdowns last week, and guys like Cavatoni, who's been a big key factor running the football. And then the complement is A.J. Miller off of play action. He had a touchdown pass to Charlie Stevens last week as well. And that's going to be the key, right? Pelham is not easy to run the football against, but Rye has to test them. And they have to use that offensive line that's been playing well to try to move bodies. They like to send a lot of heat, so counter action could be huge for them. And play action is also going to be really key. Again, don't know status to some of the skill guys who might not be there for him, but A.J. Miller's got to be smart with the football, go through play action, pass game, and there might be some big opportunities that are going to open up defensively. Again, I mentioned number 3 defense in points allowed. Mars, this defense has been really efficient for most of the season. And Fairhurst had an INT last week. Gawazo has been very active for this defense throughout the season. He had also a strong game last week. Sirac, another guy who's been pretty dynamic on that defensive line. But they have guys, Mars, multiple guys who can make plays for you. This defense is very aggressive. They will rely on their secondary guys to try to win one-on-one matchups so that they can be aggressive against the run. They can bring pressure. So I think that's Rye's formula, and they're going to test. But the big thing is going to be keeping Pelham's quarterback in the pocket. A lot of rollouts and sprint outs they like to do, and getting out on the edge and counters are going to be extremely important too. They've had 4 games this year, this defense, Mars, of 12 points or fewer. The last 2 weeks, outside that fourth quarter versus South, they have been really, really strong defensively. Thoughts on Rye, Mars?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the most interesting matchups I was really thinking about this week. I think Rye has been all around a very solid team. Obviously, defensively and offensively playing very well. And obviously, injuries have really caused them to kind of adjust and be kind of a mixture of different offenses. And they kind of were always like that. They always had multiple types of ways that they could attack you. But
they're relying on the run game a lot more recently.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, I think they had the ability to do a lot more. And because you have a lot of skill players that can make big plays, and the offensive line has been playing well all year. So that's kind of been like what the driving force was, to really create those open lanes to run. But I think the offense can be efficient as long as they kind of get those positive plays and then they can work the boot action, like you said, with AJ Miller. Defensively, I think they're going to be known for setting the heat. They always do. So the key thing is going to be whether or not the secondary can stay on their man, and can the stunts really land and really try to keep contained against a very well coached Pelham offense.
Yeah. When I go to Palomar, 4-0. Pelham is at home, so really good road team versus a really good home team. Offensively, this is the number 5 offense in points scored, which is 5th among 8 playoff teams. Defensively, number 6, which is 5th among the 8 playoff teams. And offensively, 4 games, they've had 35-plus points this season, but none in the last 3 games. They had 27 points last week. One of those touchdowns was on a special teams touchdown. Misdirection is a cute thing. They like to do a lot of counters, whether it's quarterback counters or running back counters, quarterback rollouts, sprint outs, wide receiver sweeps. I think, again, getting Rye, who's very aggressive, to kind of giving them counteraction, giving them false sense of direction, getting their eyes looking in the wrong direction is going to be big, because Rye is very aggressive, and you got to try to catch them with some counter stuff. And that's going to be really big. And Callum Reanmars, boy, what a great game he had last week. He had a passing touchdown, 2 INTs. He had a pass deflection that led to another INT. Huge two-way player for them, and he is one of their most dynamic guys. Going to have to step up big time on both sides of the ball this week as well. But they have other guys, and Teddy Johnson has been very reliable. Timmy Meyer has been very reliable. Their wide receiver, Massarelli, I think their biggest playmaker out on the edge. He had that punt return game-winning touchdown last week. He's another guy who you can do jet sweeps with and hitting the ball on some deep patterns as well. Huge, Pelham is a grinded-out physical football team, but they have some skilled guys who can hit big plays. They have to win those one-on-one matchups if Rye is going to bring stunts out on the outside. They're going to have to. Even moving Teddy Johnson out to the wide receiver, or Timmy Meyer, running patterns with him as well, going to be really big. Defensively, last week they forced 3 turnovers. The number 1 priority is stopping the rush attack of Rye, which has been really potent these last couple of weeks. And, they like to bring their linebackers, like I mentioned. So this defensive line with Luke Green, these linebackers coming with some stunts. I think you're going to see a lot of loaded boxes and try to rely on these secondary guys. Based on the status of some of the skill guys of Rye, you might have to do some man-to-man. But depending on if they come back, might change the game plan, right? I mean, you can't stay in man coverage versus those guys, because that could be dangerous, right? But if they have some injuries there, you might want to rely on a little bit more man so you can load some more boxes. But 62 points, Mars, they've allowed last 2 weeks. So Pelham defensively hasn't been as, potent as they normally are these last couple of weeks. They definitely want to shore that up. Mars, thoughts on Pelham?
Yeah, I think Pelham is going to really have to rely on the key things about using misdirection and trying to get their playmakers outside and try to get them, at least even whether it's outside or just get them out in the open, get them in space so that they can make some big plays. And I think that the biggest thing they're going to need to do is really test the Rye secondary, because of the fact that we all know Rye is going to send the heat. They're going to stack the box as much as possible, stop the run. So maybe trying to get those really good matchups going. So try to get some Pelham receivers on some secondary that they could possibly get open with. And I think that will be kind of the key thing offensively that they're going to be looking for. And defensively, I think that's going to be kind of a similar idea. They got to stop the run attack. They're going to have to try to really bank on their secondary, because they're going to be tested a lot in this game. Especially because we know that Riley's going to try to run, Pelham's going to try to bail to stop the run. It's going to be almost like both sides of the ball, both teams are going to be testing each other's secondary to see who's going to have the advantage here.
Yeah. All right, Mars, let's pick the game. And again, I got to just say this about both programs who were at senior heavy teams last season. Both of them, 1 loss going into the playoffs. Both competed for league titles this year. Again, really strong performance by both programs, especially Pelham deserves a lot of credit. Now, Pelham at home, Rye dealing with some injuries on the skill position. Really interesting game here, Mars, but I actually think the upset's going to happen. I do think Rye is actually going to win this game on the road. And I think it's going to be because, again, I have a lot of respect for Pelham up front, but I do think Rye offensive line has really stepped up these last couple weeks. The offensive line and defensive line, if they play at that level, I do think it creates a real strong presence that they can control the trenches and they can control time of possession. And again, I mentioned the last couple of weeks, Pelham's defense hasn't been as strong as they normally are. Can Rye take advantage of that, especially running the football? I think they do, and I think Rye is actually going to win this game, and I think this is the upset.
Yeah, see, this is a really tough game for me to pick. I was leaning towards having tell them because of obviously the home field advantage and the fact that I think that this is a big game for them, especially because they've had some really tough ones recently. But I'm actually going to go with Rye as well. I do agree with you. I was actually surprised that you picked Rye because, just seeing that we've been agreeing on a lot of these, but I was like, I didn't think you were going to pick Rye on this one. But I'm going to go with Rye. I'm going to say Rye will be the upset here because of the fact that I do rely on guys like AJ Miller and some of these other playmakers have been very impressive all season long. And like you said, the offensive line for Rye has been very good recently, and they've been good all season. So the big game is going to be on them and on their shoulders, and obviously going to be based on how AJ Miller and as well as others will play. The fact that Rye can do mix and match of a lot of different types of offensive styles and play calling, I think gives them an advantage that not a lot of people can really say. I mean, the fact that they have the ability to do a lot more than just one style, one type, is really impressive because of the fact that it's hard to already scheme against Rye normally, but now you have to try to come up with defend against an entirely different scheme as well. So it's gonna be tough to do. I think Rye's gonna win.
Yeah, no, we agree. I mean, sometimes smart minds think alike, right? Another question, again, appreciate you guys obviously tuning in for the show. We are driving through the A games right now. They're going to head to B, C, and D in the Hudson Valley Football League and then pick, the Hudson Valley Football League, then C and D. We're going to pick all the games. And obviously, you miss anything, you can always come back to the show. But make sure to give that thumbs up and subscribe. I do see a couple more questions. Sorry about so many South questions, but I'm a South parent. Oh, don't worry about that. Who do you think would win a South or Rye if they had a rematch in the playoffs? Well, I tell you this, if Rye wins and South wins, they will be playing each other. I feel I'm going to have to, I apologize for this. I'm going to have to hold off because if that game, I don't want to give a potential pick that might happen next week. So I'm going to have to, I apologize, but I have to hold off on that one. Mars, you're going to hold off too, right? Because we're probably going to pick that game.
Yeah, just because I don't want to, I want to see, who wins and everything, and then we'll make decisions then.
Best receiving core in the section. Wow, that's another tough one. If I had to say, I think South might be the best receiving core. They might. I think when Rye was completely healthy, it was pretty competitive up there. Mamaroneck has some dudes.
I was going to say Mamaroneck would have been another option I thought of.
Yeah. I think it's between South and Mamaroneck. But in A, if we're just talking A, I thought it was between South and Rye. And I think I'm going to go with South, especially with the injuries. But he said in section. Mamaroneck's got some dudes.
Yeah, we got another one. Michael Holder or Maffett Simons.
Oh, man. You guys are bringing the hard questions. The hard questions. And this is with utmost respect to both players. But I'm going to go with Fitzsimons.
Yeah, I think that Simons is kind of I think
both tremendous years, both very good different athletes. Styles.
Yep.
I go Fitzsimons. All right, Mars, let's get to the next one. Number 3 seed, Mayapack. 4-3 at number 2 seed, Harrison, who's 7-1. Let's start with Mayapack. 2-1 on the road. Offensively, the number 4 scoring offense. Number 4 among the 8 playoff teams. Defensively, number 9. Defensively, which is 7th out of the 8th playoff teams. And offensively, Mars, I mean, we've talked about this a few times. The Koch brothers have really been the engine of this offense. And the offensive line, who has played much improved as the season's gone along. They've always had size, but now they've really melded together and opened up lanes. But the Koch brothers have accounted for 9 touchdowns, Mars, the last 2 weeks, which is 82% of their touchdowns. So obviously, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're circling those 2 players as being kind of the bell cows of that offense. And obviously, Joey Koch really is, to me, Joey Koch, he's up there for Offensive Player of the Year, and I think could even get some votes for MVP. That's how good of a year I think he's had for this offense. And it's not just him running the football, especially off tackle and out on the edge. They really like to hit off tackle and out on the edge. They want to get Koch, who is one of the fastest kids in the section, out on the edge because not many people can tackle him. But also receiving the ball out of the backfield has been really big for him. And again, I mentioned this offensive line has done a solid job. But Danny Koch at the quarterback spot now doing some power read concepts with his brother is tough to defend. And what Danny Koch has also done, quarterback scrambles have also been pretty big for them. There have been times where, there's been nothing there or that he's not comfortable with what he's seeing, and he'll take off, and he's had some big runs as well. So that's kind of the concept, right? Is a lot of Joey, some Danny, and then some hitting some play action pass, right? I mean, that is the formula that Mahopac has run, and that's the formula I think that they're going to keep with it, which I do think Harrison, who has a strong front, I still think Mahopac has a slight size advantage, even though Harrison's got some bulk. I still think Mahopac has a size advantage, and they have to pound the rock. I think that's obviously their formula, and it's got to stick to it. Defensively, Mars, that's where I think the big question mark is. Because offensively, they put up a lot of points, but defensively, they've also had 4 games that they've allowed 28-plus points. And at times, they've had 3 games they've allowed 13 or less, right? So it's been a big hit or miss with this defense. But one thing they have done is they have forced turnovers in big moments. And Porco has been a big guy who's made plays. I know Ryan's has made some plays for them. They've forced some fumbles. They've had some INTs. They've given up a lot of yards, but they've forced some turnovers that have helped them kind of alleviate some of that pain and to stop teams from scoring. Thoughts on Mahopac, Mars?
Yeah, when you look at this offense, I think it's the Koch show, right? I think the Koch show is, really been driving this offense, all along. I think really Joey Koch has been dominant all year long, and then Danny Koch comes in the quarterback, and all of a sudden the offense becomes even more efficient because of the fact that you have this duo between the both of them that are both athletic, both can make plays on the outside, and Danny Koch has made a lot of great plays at the quarterback position, being able to do power reads and throwing the ball very effectively. So you have a very dynamic duo here. Like you said, 9 touchdowns the last 2 weeks combined, right? Which is very hard, which is a very difficult stat to obtain
82% of their scoring.
Yeah, that's 82% of their scoring is coming from those two guys. So, like you said before, defensive coordinators, at some point you're thinking to yourself, okay, statistics tell me that one of these two guys are going to be the ones getting the ball here. But it's been impressive. This offensive line has also been playing well. And I think obviously, they have a size advantage here against Harrison. Defensively, that is probably their biggest struggle. They've given up a lot of points. I think, like you said, they're the 7th defense amongst the playoff teams. Yeah. So right now they are, they're at the bottom of the list right now, near the bottom of the list. So, it's going to be tough to see, but they have been doing one thing well, and that is winning the turnover battle, right? Yeah. I think that's kind of the key thing to remember about Mahopac.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we go to Harrison, Mars, and this has been a really strong year for Harrison. I think one of their probably strongest years in a while. They made the playoffs last season, but this feels like a team that could make moves. And what I found interesting is, I kind of asked around the league on thoughts on some of these matchups at times, and they feel that, which I found interesting, that this one could be on upset alert out of all the matchups, which I found to be very interesting because, I feel like this is such a big game for Harrison at home, kind of a pride game to show, I thought a win versus Rye was a step in that direction. But winning this first playoff game, I think, would show that, hey, how serious of a contender is Harrison, right? I think that's a really important game for them. Offensively, Mars, the number 1 offense in A in points scored. Defensively, they're number 2. I mean, they've had a strong year on both sides of the ball. Now it's playoff time. Now we want to see how real this team is, right? And when I look at this offense, 5 games of scoring 40-plus points, Mars, it starts with that offensive line. Guys like Haynes and Ranello and the rest of that crew have done a really, really strong job. And they're up against a big front in Mahopac. They're going to have to move bodies. And they had 453 yards last week. They had 242 yards rushing the week prior. I mean, they have multiple guys that are going to feed the rock to. They're not like the Koch brothers. They have multiple backs that they're going to give the ball to. Barcelo's been really strong for them, 124 yards in the touchdown last week. Citro has had 5 touchdowns the last 2 weeks at the quarterback spot. McLaughlin, He has had a receiving touchdown now in 2 straight, and I feel this game for McLaurin is going to be huge. You know Mayapack is going to pack the box to try to stop the run. McLaurin is going to get some one-on-one opportunities. He's got to make the most of it. He's got to generate some big plays for this offense to respect him on the outside. Krupi's another guy who's made some plays for them. Can they play clean, Mars, avoid the turnovers and the penalties that Mayapack's defense has preyed on at times? If they can, I think Harrison can move the ball. They're going to run option. They do some spread stuff. They're going to feed the ball to different people. They want to get these offensive linemen moving, and I think that's what they got to do. They got to get Mayapack moving around, right? They're not just going to bull them over. They got to get them moving, create some lanes for their backs. Nick Reed is another guy, their kicker to keep an eye on. He's had a tremendous season. He's also hit some big field goals against Rye, had a 27-yard field goal last week. Defensively, 5 straight games, Mars, of 7 or less points. I mean, it's been really strong for them, but can they slow down the Koch brothers? That's going to be the big thing. Teams haven't been able to do. If I'm on that defensive front 7, I am refusing to let Joey Koch beat me. I need somebody else at Mayapack to beat me. It cannot be Joey Koch. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a 4-quarter fight because he can break one off at any time. But, man, this defensive front 7 has to really bottle him up. You cannot let him beat you. That's got to be the number one priority. You got to do whatever it takes. And when he's in the backfield, you have to be careful with bringing pressure because he's a guy who can sneak out of the backfield and catch a ball that's 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage and take it 80, right? So you have to be disciplined on where he is on the field at all times. If on the defensive Harrison, can they force a turnover or two is going to be another key thing. Mars, thoughts on Harrison?
Yeah, Harrison, I think, has probably had one of the most impressive seasons. They've kind of exceeded a lot of people's expectations. A lot of people didn't think that they were going to be as good as they are, and they've just been dominant. I think when you're looking at this, this defense and offense together, they've just been, top tier, right? They've been scoring what you said, 40+ points in 5 games, right? That's just impressive.
Yeah, 5 games this year, 40+ points.
Yeah, 5 games, 40+ points, and defensively they've been, 5 straight games of less than around 7, right? That's just been dominant, right? And I think the key thing here, though, is that you have to look at the matchups, right? I think that Harrison they have a really good front 7. They need to really prioritize slowing down Joey and Danny Koch. You really want the quarterback and running back duo taken out of the game and really force somebody other than those 2 guys to make the big plays. And offensively, I do agree with you. They might not have the size advantage against Mayapack, but I think they have a lot of weapons that can make a lot of plays. And they have to try to get to the outside to, try to create some lanes for their skill players to get an open space. I think it's going to be a very interesting game for sure.
Yeah, I do. Let's pick the game, Mars. Again, this has kind of been a game you ask around, might be on upset alert. I think the Koch brothers have been fantastic. This offensive line has improved, but I'm going to go with Harrison. I think this is a pride game. I think Harrison is at home. I think Harrison has played well on both sides of the ball. And defensively, I mentioned 5 straight games of 7 points or less. I don't think they allow 7 or less points in this game, but this defense has been showing up and they swarm to the football, and they have a couple of guys who can make plays on the defensive side of the ball. I think I'm going to go with Harrison. I think Harrison wins his first. And again, when was the last time Harrison won a playoff game in A? I think it's also been a few years. So I think this is a big moment for them at home. I think they do it. I think they win this game.
Yeah, you know what? I think when I look at Harrison, I think that they have a lot of ability. They have a lot of things going for them. And this season, they've just been, rocking a lot of teams. And they've been helping me win a lot of my picks I've been making all season long. I'm going to go with Mayapack, though. I think Mayapack, this is their I guess you call it the big upset alert. A lot of teams are saying that, a lot of people are saying that they're going to win. And, I always put the challenge out to Mayapack, and I say, you know what? Then win, right? Let's see. Yeah, let's see. You keep going.
You picked Mayapack a few times,
and they've won. All right. The key thing is, I keep saying, Mayapack's is one of the biggest schools in A, right? They should be at the in the dance of the section final, right? They should be up there, right? So now this is the chance. Playoff time. It's up, just elimination games. No other records matter anymore. It's about winning week by week, and you're going up against Harrison. I really want to find the stat on when the last time Mayapack has lost to Harrison, because I don't even know the last time they played them. So the key thing is that this should be a game that Mayapack should win. I know that. I'm gonna go over the top here. I'm gonna go with Mayapack in this one.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the final A game, Mars. Number 4 seed Brewster at number 1 seed Somers. rivalry game in the playoffs, nothing better than that, right? I mean, we got Somers 12-3 versus Brewster. They've won 5 straight. So Brewster is trying to pull off this big upset. And Brewster 2-2 on the road this season. Offensively, they're number 8 out of the 15 school in points scored, which is 8 out of the 8 playoff teams. This offense has moved the ball. I mean, they've been pretty efficient all year. Defensively, though, is where they've improved the most. Number 8 as well, which is number 6 out of the 8 schools in A. Offensively, they've had 4 games where they've scored 28-plus points. They rushed last week for 275 yards, Mars. And it all starts with their quarterback in Perello. 7-10, 60 yards. He also had 96 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. He's been really, really good for them all season long. For this offense, really important for their offense, and he's going to be key in this game. And Enfuso is another guy who's been really strong. 107 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Barry had 50 yards rushing. We know about some of the weapons in Walters and Sanchez and Lamaro, young guy who has stepped up. How do you go against this Somers defense, Mars? Listen, I think Somers' defense has been really strong all year long. The only time a leakage, I guess, they've had is out on the edge. And if you can get out on the edge and at times give some counteraction to try to run inside, you can't just bail out from running inside. It's too predictable. But if you can mix it up a little bit, get some movement up front at times in between the tackles and try to get out on the edge, the play action pass, which Brewster is really strong at, will come into effect. And I do think they need to hit on some big pass plays to some of these receivers. Defensively, secondary really is going to be the question and is going to be tested. I do think this defense has improved the last couple of weeks. Like Carlson had a sack last week. Peragostini had a sack last week. I mentioned Colin Lamaro, who was a young guy who stepped up. This defensive front 7 is going to be really important. Again, Somers has improved at running the ball, but it's about getting pressure on Matt Fitzsimons, and they're going to have to get pressure up front. And this secondary, can they man up? Can they run with some of these receivers? At times, it has not been pretty for the secondary, and at times, the last couple of weeks, they've been pretty solid. So we're going to see, but they've had 3 games where they've allowed 30-plus points in the first 4 weeks, Mars. But the last 2 out of 3 weeks, 12 points or less, right? So you could see that improvement there. It's going to be really important. Thoughts on Brewster?
I think Brewster has definitely been playing a lot better, especially when it comes to like running the ball and everything. And I think that Enfuso is going to be pivotal to this game. I think Somers' defense has been solid all the way around, but like you said, I think the biggest thing they're going to have to prioritize is breaking the contain. And obviously we all know that the secondary is going to be really tested here. And I think the biggest thing Brewster needs to do front 7 wise is try to slow down or even get to Matt Fitzsimons is going to be big. And I think Brewster's going to have to really prioritize causing him some pressure.
Yeah. Let's get to Somers, Mars. Offensively, the number 3 offense in points scored, 3rd out of the 8 playoff teams. Defensively, number 1 in points allowed, which is number 1 out of the 8 playoff teams. This is their 3rd straight regular season that they have gone undefeated. So another really strong stretch for Somers these last couple of years. And let's start with the offense. Last 3 weeks, Mars, they've scored 41, 41, and 38. This offense has really started to hum here. 5 games of 35-plus points. Quarterback Fitzsimons, 14 of 16, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown. I mean, just dominant last week. And he's had a very strong season, not talked about enough. Really, really strong. Ravi Das had a receiving touchdown. Mason Kelly's another guy, young running back, who has stepped up, and he had a receiving touchdown last week, also running the football. We know Max Sullivan's a guy who stepped up. He's had a receiving touchdown. Luke Savino's another guy who's kind of been a bell cow running back for them. Really good kicker, but he's stepped up as a running back. But how about this offensive line, Mars? We talked about Hogmolly reports. The Somers offensive line has really started to come together and been that dominant force that we've expected to be, led by Polito. But it's not just him. The rest of the guys on that offensive line have really stepped up and molded together. And you're starting to see them really hit their stride at the perfect moment, which is playoff time, right? So offensive line has been really strong. Defensively, Mars, I mentioned, this defense is predicated on stopping the run, and that's with light boxes and heavy boxes. What I mean by that is how many people are in between the tackles. They can defend the run well either with a light box or a heavy box, and if you're going to come out and spread, they'll go light and have their defense swarm to the ball. Their defensive line is tough to move, and they allow their secondary linebackers to roam and make plays. And if you're going to bring in tight ends, if you're going to bring in multiple backs, they'll go heavy, and they have the size that they can hold up. But the question is, don't give up those big pass plays off of play action is going to be the key one for them. Thoughts Thoughts on Somers, Mars? I actually have a defensive video I want to show the audience.
Yeah, I feel like Somers has just been, like you said before, been dominant. Obviously, they've been, just every year they've always been in the top level. And offensive, defensive, they've been in the top 3, I think, for every single year, either 1 or 2. And just this year, they've just been dominant as well. I think the offensive line is really what I think the biggest credit to this offense and moving forward. And obviously, Mathis Simons is obviously, a top level talent as well. But you have a lot of guys who can make a lot of plays here. So offensively, I think they have a lot of things that they could do right. And defensively, they've also been very tough. They've been really destined to stop the run. Secondary is going to be tested just because of the fact that they're going to be sending the heat. I think that's going to be the key thing here. So I think Somers has, a good advantage here because they have a lot of size and just a lot of aggressiveness up front. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to show a video on Somers, and then we're going to pick the game, Mars. So can I share my screen?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, let me share this, guys. I'm going to talk about Somers' defense. And again, their ability to stop the run, which opens things up for their defense to be aggressive in the secondary. And they have the ability to rush with just 4 guys and create pressure. Or they can bring in some blitzes and cause your quarterback a lot of trouble. But it all starts with stopping the run. And you're going to see here, right? This is a spread look. Again, they got, I think it's 3 receivers to the right, 1 receiver backside. They're spread out. And Somers is actually in a light box. And I mentioned, what is a light box? If you look in between the tackles, you count the number of defenders. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? This linebacker's outside. This outside guy's outside. And so you have 7 guys on offense and 5 guys on defense. This should be favorable to run the football if you're the offense. And so they're actually going to run kind of a read play where they're going to pull these 2 guys. He's going to run the ball. Quarterback could pull it if he wants. But I want you to watch this defensive lineman. They're hard to move, and it allows these guys in the linebacking core and secondary to run to the football. And one guy right here, Luke Kennedy, he is one of the best at that, doing that. You see him line up on the outside right there. Look at him run up on this run play. Right? He's not sitting, right? He's attacking. Right, he's not running sideways. He's attacking forward. Watch this guy right here. You're going to see when he pulls, he reads that. He's attacking right here. This guy's staying for the quarterback. Quarterback doesn't take it. Watch these guys swarm. And look at the play side. No movement. Right, they've done a really good job of holding their ground. And watch the linebackers come and swarm. And look at these guys coming in to finish this play. Right, even in a light box, 5 guys favorable to the offense. They swarm. They make the play. Now you're bringing 2 backs. Right, here's another game. They're bringing 2 backs. Okay, we'll bring in some heavy sets. We'll trust in our secondary to play man-to-man. Now they got 7 guys in the box. All right, so you got 8 versus 7. Still supposed to be favorable to the offense, but 7 guys with this defensive line, hard to move, allowing these linebackers. They're actually going to motion this guy right here, try to run to the outside, test the edge of this defense. Watch these guys swarm. Play side does a good job. They don't get moved. Look at them attack the outside. They don't give them an outside lane, but look at the backside, Mars. Look at these linemen following these linemen down the line, not running up the field. These linebackers swarming. Right? Play side linebacker comes up, defensive lineman on the edge, making that play. I mean, there's nothing there. Right? You see that on tape all the time when you're watching the Somers defense for the most part. Now, again, when you watch them play, when you can stop the run like that, it puts a lot of pressures on your quarterback, right? Because they can, again, stop the run, put you in long down situations, and now you can pin your ears back and create some pressure. Right? And you're going to see, he starts off in the box right here to try to confuse the quarterback. He's actually going to come out to the outside. They're running kind of a cover 3. You don't see the corner, but you're going to see he's going to turn his hips and get depth at the snap of the ball. And this safety's in the middle of the field. So this looks like a cover 3 concept. And quarterback wants to go in this direction, right? But he can't go through his full reads because of the pressure up front. Watch these guys. They're going to do a post wheel concept here. The wheel actually has probably the best opportunity to get open. And you're going to see right here, right? Look at the move he made on this tackle. He's getting pressured. He's winning this battle right here. They're generating some pressure up the middle. This quarterback doesn't have a lot of time. He sees this right here on this post. He's thinking, okay, this is where I'm going to take it. Corner has his hips turned to this receiver. This receiver on the wheel is actually going to end up being the proper throw, but he doesn't have the time to see it, right? Because he needs to, the pressure's coming. He's got to throw it right here, right? He thinks that he's going to make this tight window throw. He gets slammed on that throw. It's underthrown. Look at the DB make this play right here. Really strong play, makes that INT, and this is what we see from Somers. When they can stop the run, then they can rush the passer, and these were the mistakes come on offense. And this is why Somers has been the number 1 defense, I mean, for multiple years now. Yeah, I mean, Mars, let's pick the game. I listen, love rivalry games and playoff. I think Brewster had to win 3 straight games to get into the playoffs. The offense has been pretty strong, and defensively they've been improving. But I think Somers is too much. You have to go into Somers and win. I think it's too much. I think Somers' offensive line is playing at a high level. Defensively, number 1 in points allowed. I think it's going to be tough sledding for Brewster. I'm going Somers.
Yeah, I do agree with you, man. I feel like Somers just has too much. Their offensive line has just been very efficient, and I think they just have too many guys for Brewster to really try to slow down. I'm gonna go with Somers here.
All right, Mars, that was A. We're gonna jump to B, and then we're gonna do the Hudson Valley Football League, and then finish the show off. I see questions coming in. Appreciate you guys as always joining the show. Make sure to give that thumbs up and subscribe. Who do you think would win in a Clarkstown South Arlington game? I think Arlington is a terrible matchup for South because of their ability to push people around and run the football. I think they would control the time of possession for a long time, but South has a speed advantage versus Arlington. I think another very, very tough game. I think that one's a coin flip, and I think I would choose the team who's home. So I don't think I'm going to have a pick on that one. I'm going to take the home team. I think they're pretty evenly matched up. I don't think they're a good matchup for each other is kind of the big thing because football at times is a big matchup game, especially when you get to the elite teams. Who's your pick so far for? Oh, actually, Mars, do you have any quick thoughts, or do you want me to move?
No, I feel like South, it has a lot of speed, but like Frank said, the size of Arlington is also the other issue. I guess you would say that South is going to have overall. So I think that's going to be the key thing here. I think it's tough. It's tough. I don't know if I would pick a game, just because I have to kind of look at who, like you said, who's home, and
I know.
It's tough.
We don't shoot at the hip here, man. We do analytics here. We watch tape here, so we don't shoot at the hip. But who's your pick so far for MVP and Offensive Player of the Year? Good question. Appreciate the question. We actually are going to console on that and pick MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. So we do not want to give that right now, right? So we're not going to do that right now. Byram, yes, we're getting to that. I appreciate you, Mr. Genji, for staying. We are getting to Byram. We're on B now. Let's dive into it, Mars. First matchup, talk about number 8 seed Hen Hud at number 1 seed Pleasantville, Mars. This was a regular season game that was forfeited by Hen Hud to Pleasantville a couple weeks ago. Here comes the rematch. And let's start with Hen Hud, Mars. Offensively, the number 6 rated team in points scored out of 8 schools. Defensively, number 7 out of the 8 schools. I actually think this offense has been improving even before their forfeited game. And last week, they've had 20-plus points now in 3 straight games. This offensive line has some size to it, and it's this rush attack. Running behind guys like Travis, that has worked for them. And their running back Parkes has been a really strong runner for them. But against Pleasantville, it's very difficult to run the ball with consistency. You have to hit on some big pass plays. And so their quarterback Wells is going to have to really generate some big pass plays off of play action. They're not a big pure spread team. They're going to run the wing T concept. Play action pass is going to be huge on that. They have to catch Pleasantville when they're being extremely aggressive and bringing multiple guys close to the line of scrimmage. Defensively, Mars, last week was a struggle. They gave up 29 points. I thought before that they were improving. They were up big last week, but things just fell off for them. And I think they gave up a couple onside kicks as well that really hurt them. Before last week, I thought this was a proving defense. And so I'm interested to see what defense comes around, but it's all about bottling Picard. You have to try to force other players on Pleasantville to beat you. You can't let Picard rush for 200 yards. You have no chance if that happens. So keeping Picard at bay, you're not going to shut him down, but keeping him at bay, forcing Pleasantville to beat you, throwing the football to other guys, not to Daniel, is going to be their key to try to win it, Mars. What are your thoughts on Hen Hud? Yeah,
Hen Hud, I think obviously they struggled last week defensively, and I think that they, like you said, they kind of have to bottle down who, someone other than Picard being the main, aggressor on Pleasantville's offense. I think their rush offense is going to be the biggest thing here for Hen Hud. Play action is going to have to be big for them this week, especially because that Pleasantville is going to be coming in with a lot of heat, especially on the defensive end. So the play action is going to have to be their big play.
Absolutely. When I go to Pleasantville, Mars, the number 2 offense out of the 8 schools in B, and defensively the number 1, right? So this has been a really strong defense, but offensively they've been making some plays, and I got to give them credit offensively. 28 and 27 points the last 2 weeks. We obviously know this is the Daniel Picard show. He had, 3 touchdowns rushing last week. This is a guy who will get 30-plus touches a game. I'm anticipating that to continue, getting 30-plus touches a game, running the ball, catching the ball. moving him around. I think that's all great stuff. But the question I've always had about Pleasantville in the consistency, if they're going to be a complete team, who else is going to step up and make plays, right? So I know Daniel Picard, Houdini, the magician, the guy who pulls rabbits out of hats, but who else is going to make plays for them? And they have guys who that have that potential. Aiden Picard is a guy I focus on, Coleman, McDermott. But this offensive line, this veteran offensive line, has got to win against a pretty decent-sized Hen Hud defensive front. They like to be very aggressive. So if this offensive line can continue to play at a high level, which they have for most of the season, I think Pleasantville will be able to move the ball, especially running the football. Defensively, Mars, 14 or less points each game this season they've allowed. So they've never allowed more than 14 points in a game so far. They are very tough against the run. Starts in that defensive front set. Kitsley, Alice Way, Saren Dungada, which I butcher his name all the time, and I apologize to his family for that. And then at the linebacking core, guys like Ryan Horgan, who to me is just such a tremendous player. But defensively, they cause so much issues at that first level. It's hard to get to the second level and block Ryan Horgan, who's flying to the ball. And even their secondary outside linebacker guys, they're also active. And so when you stop the run and get them in long down situations, then you see these defensive backs make plays. Daniel Picard had an INT for a touchdown, right, last week. We have Hudzinski, who's had a very strong year for them in the secondary, but they have multiple guys who can make plays for you. That's kind of their identity, Pleasantville, has been defense and Daniel Picard rushing. And so I think that's the formula that's going to continue. And would sprinkle in some of that play action with Aiden Picard and some of the other guys, but that's their identity, and I think that continues in this game. Thoughts on Pleasantville before I pick it, Mars?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is Pleasantville is, the offense has just been doing very well. They've been very efficient. I think that's the key word, right? Efficiency. And Dan McCart's been obviously making a big play every single game. He does like one of those like, wow, that's awesome type of plays where he really just surprises people about his athleticism. But you do have to applaud a lot of the other weapons like Aiden Picard, a quarterback, has been playing very well. Eric Coleman has been doing very well. McDermott and McPhee. These are all guys on the offensive end that do make a lot of plays. And the offensive line, you got to give a lot of credit to. They've been pushing bodies around, and they've just been doing well on the offensive end. And defensively, Ryan Horgan has been a freaking nature type of player, right? He's been all over the field. And
I think defensive player of the year, he's in the conversation.
Yeah, and just the front seven, I think in general has been playing very well for Pleasantville, and obviously the secondary as well. Number one defense in B, so I think it's just been an all-around effort. They send a lot of heat, so that means the secondary gets tested often, and they've been very efficient. So all around, Pleasantville's defense and offense have been doing very well this season.
Yeah. I'm going to pick the game, Mars. I think Hen Hud, again, has been improving even before the forfeited game. Last week defensively was a little bit leaky. I don't think they're good enough to beat Pleasantville, unfortunately. I think Pleasantville at home, number one defense, even though Hen Hud offense has been improving, but I think they're going to have a tough time stopping Daniel Picard. I'm going Pleasantville. Let's go to the next matchup. I do see a question. Welcome, Jaden Gabriel. How's it going, man? What's your pick for John Jay, East Fishkill against North Rockland? We did pick that game. I'm glad you joined the show. I picked John Jay, and so did Mars. So we both picked John Jay to win that matchup. And again, guys, anybody who missed anything, you can go back and watch the show once it's posted. Right, Mars? I think once it's posted, you can.
You can actually go back and watch it now as well. There's DVR. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so you can go back and watch it. And appreciate you for joining, by the way. But let's get to the next matchup, Mars. Number 5 seed, Pearl River, 3-4 at number 4 seed, Ardsley, 4-3. These guys played in week 6, which was a couple weeks ago, where Ardsley won 21-7. Let's start with Pearl River. Pearl River, 2-2 on the road. Offensively, they're number 8 out of the 8 schools in B. Defensively, number 5 out of the 8 schools in B. And I mentioned that I give you those numbers because offensively, this has been the most inconsistent unit that they've had. And it obviously starts with the running game. Espinal has been really, really good for this team in offense. He had, 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's had a really strong season for them running the ball. And it really is predicated on running behind his physical offensive line and running the football and then opening up things for their quarterbacks who, they'll play multiple guys. Whalen's another guy who's had some big plays this season. Can they generate enough plays in the passing game against a very tough Ardsley defense? To me, is the question. I think they have some weapons, but it starts with running the ball and getting ahead of the chains because in second, third, and long, and you saw that a couple weeks ago, Ardsley will prey on you and force turnovers. They're pretty sound defensively. So, the hardest thing to do is beat a team twice in the season, especially when you played them only a couple weeks back. But if Pearl River can't run the ball consistently, they're going to have another tough game coming up ahead of them. Defensively, Mars, 2 out of the last 4 games, they've allowed less than 10 points. They're going up against some multiple offense in Ardsley, and at times I think this defense has been pretty good. But against the last game they've had, they did get hurt on some big pass plays. And the passing game did hurt them against Ardsley last time. Look for Ardsley to try to prey on them, especially intermediate routes past the linebackers, right? So they know that Pearl River likes to be aggressive. The linebackers like to be aggressive, stop the run. They try to throw it back over the top of them. I'd like to see for them to test it. Espinal had a strong game last week, running the ball and on defense, 8 tackles and a sack. Aiden Lee had 2 INTs. Anthony Graziano had a forced fumble and fumble recovery. This defense, 4 turnovers last week. If they could force some turnovers, that would be a huge help for their offense, especially on a short field. Our thoughts on Pearl River?
Yeah, I think Pearl River, has been, trying to develop that run game. I think that's kind of their best bet here, the best avenue for scoring points. And defensively, I think they've been playing better as well recently. And I think the key thing for them is going to be trying to at least try to slow down the pass. I feel like that's going to be their biggest weakness right now. Ardsley is really going to try to throw it around, and they have a lot of formations that could do a lot of different things with, especially the way that Ardsley likes to do those RPOs. I think that's going to be something that, Pearl River is going to have to try to key in on.
Yeah, and going to Ardsley, Mars, 3-1 at home. Offensively, the number 3 offense. Defensively, number 4 defense. And offensively, listen, it's a multiple offense. We just talked about that. And this pass attack has really improved as the season's gone along. The last couple of weeks have been pretty strong. Quarterback Randy, 4 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Silverman had a really strong game against Pearl River a couple weeks back when he had over 112 total yards and 3 touchdowns. He's been very reliable for them offensively. But Anthony Chenard, he had 2 touchdowns receiving last week. He's also been another weapon. And look for Ardsley to try to take advantage of the passing game. Again, Pearl River is not too easy to run against, even though Vega had 95 total yards against them a couple weeks back. But, you can hit some big pass plays, which will loosen up this defense, will help you run the ball more. And I'm looking to see Ardsley try to capitalize on that. Defensively, listen, I think this defense has been really strong for most of the season, but 3 out of the last 4 weeks, Mars, they've allowed 27-plus points, right? So Ardsley's defense, I think, is a strong unit, pretty sound. Last couple weeks, there's been a little too many leaks in this defense, which have given up some big plays. But they're guys like Wells and Ferraro at the second level, and on the defensive line, Speckman, Chenard. They have to stop Speckman on defensive line, Chenard in the defensive backfield. They have to stop this rush attack, right? That's kind of the big identity of Pearl River, and they can get them in second, third, and long. That's when this defense can force some turnovers, Mark. So what are your thoughts on Ardsley? Yeah,
I think Ardsley has been one of those dangerous teams that I think – they've lost. They lost a few games recently, but 3-1 at home. I think that they are one of those under the radar teams that can make big plays. Offensively, they can score points. They can move down the field on a lot of defenses. I think they've been very efficient at running and passing the ball. Their RPOs can be very dangerous if they can land on them, and I think that they just chop people up. They can make a lot of plays. I think the fact that they have all these formations on offense really causes defenses to struggle to really try to scheme against what they can throw at them. And defensively, they've also been playing better. I mean, overall they've been solid, but recently they have been having some struggles. But they just kind of have to condense and just really try to stop the run and really try to force some turnovers. And then that's going to be what their key is for this game.
Morris, who do you have winning?
I think I'm going to have Ardsley here. I'm going to have Ardsley because of the fact their offense has just been a little more efficient. Defensively, they're going to cause a lot more pressure. I think they're going to overall just win this game just because it shows kind of. I know it's going to be probably a little bit tougher because they're playing them a second time. But I think Ardsley is going to win this game.
Yeah, I think it'll be a low-scoring game, but I'm also going to go Ardsley. I think, again, offensively, Pearl River's number 8, right? And then Ardsley's been a little bit more efficient offensively. Look for this defense of Ardsley to kind of step up. They've been a little leaky. Look for them to kind of step up. I think low-scoring game, I'm going to go Ardsley. All right, let's get to the next matchup. The number 7 seed, Briarcliff Hamilton football program at 2-6. At the number 2 seed, Byram Hills, who's 7-1. A rematch of week 3, March, was a pretty close game for 3 quarters. Byram Hills won 20-10. Now let's start with Briarcliff Hamilton football program. 0-4 on the road this year, Mars. Offensively, they're number 7 out of the 8 schools in B. Defensively, they're number 8 out of the 8 schools in B. And offensively, again, this is going to be a grind. I mean, Byram Hills has definitely improved defensively. They've avoided bigger plays. This offense is really has a lot in front of them, and I think they're going to have to throw the ball to generate some chunk plays because running the ball is not going to be too easy. And it starts with Ben Raphael, who was 10 of 18, 173 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Running the ball with Saw is going to be huge, but Harris on the outside, I think that's a guy who can win one-on-one matchups. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. Chris Harper's another guy who can generate some big plays for you. I think passing is going to be huge in this game. If they can hold up front, Byram Hill's got some size, and they can knock down balls at the line of scrimmage as well. So you got to be smart. Look for some rollouts. Look for some sprint outs. Try to get the quarterback on the edge. Because Raphael's a thick guy. I mean, he can run as well. So try to get him out on the edge and don't just try to sit him back in the pocket. I think running in between the tackles is going to be tough this week as well. Special teams last week, Mars had recovered 2 onside kicks. So I think you're going to see kind of the kitchen sink this week for Briarcliff Hamilton. Defensively, Desmond Saul was really good last week. He had he forced 3 turnovers last week. Harris has been a big player for them. Raphael had a real strong game defensively versus Byram Hills last time they played, at a huge goal line tackle, which stopped them from scoring. So again, it's going to be a team effort. And listen, if you can dictate things for some penalties from Byram Hills like they did last time, some turnovers, that's when the upsets can happen. But it's going to have to be a big team effort, and stopping the run has got to be number one priority. Listen, this defense got to step up. They've allowed 28 points 3 straight games, Mars. So that's not going to win. You give up 28, they're going to lose this week. So thoughts on Briarcliff Hamilton, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like offensively there's going to be a grind. I mean, they're going to have to. It's going to be a slow, choppy game, but I think they're going to have to try to develop the pass, get some big plays, get on the board early, right, and then allow their defense to try to be a grinded out defense, right? You can't allow the big plays. Slow down with the run. And just try to force some inefficiency on Byram to either have penalties or turnovers, something, right? Try to go up early and then try to slow them out the rest of the game.
Let's go to Byram Hills, Mars. Byram Hills 3-0 at home. Offensively, the number 1 offense in B in points scored. Defensively, number 3 in points allowed. And let's start with the offense. 4 games now of 28 plus points, Mars, this season. Very potent offense. To me, it starts with the rush attack, but they're pretty balanced as well. And Jaworski obviously is the bell cow of this offense, but I didn't see him last week, which, again, don't know the status of that. Him not playing is a huge factor. I think he's one of the best backs in B, so it's really important. Again, don't know his status. I don't get reports on that for obvious reasons, but he's such an important part of this offense. And if he's not playing, other guys are really going to have to step up. And then one guy is Luke Weiler. I mean, he had a long touchdown last week at about 50 yards. And John Accurso, their quarterback, who's going to have to use his arms and his legs. He's had 4 total touchdowns the last 2 weeks. If Jaworski's not playing, it's going to have to be a bigger burden on him. And play action is going to be huge. Getting out on the edge is going to be huge. They have some weapons, right? But running the ball, it starts with them relying on this offensive line to move bodies up front. I think they have a size advantage. But throwing to guys like Sean Siegel, who had a touchdown last week. Lucas Scally is another guy who's been a big, reliable target for them. They have weapons, right? Losing Jaworski hurts, but they have weapons that can compensate. Hopefully it's not a long-term thing, but this offense is very potent, number 1 for a reason. Defensively, they forced a couple turnovers last week. They had, I think, 3 turnovers the previous week. I think they forced 5 turnovers the last 2 weeks, and that's been huge for this defense. Getting their offense extra possessions is a pretty deadly combination. They've had 5 games this year. They've allowed 14 or less points. Last 2 weeks, Mars, they've allowed 13, and they've allowed 6. So pretty strong performance the last 2 weeks, led by their big defensive lineman, George Gassage. He had a forced fumble recovery for a touchdown last week. Previous week, he had 12 tackles, 4 for a loss, including a tackle for loss. Jack Quinn has been very active on this defense against Briarcliff Hamilton. If you can prevent big plays and force them to kind of nickel and dime down the field, you give your defense a chance to force some turnovers. Make them be efficient, right? Because they haven't been able to do that consistently enough. And that's got to be the big factor, right? Allow your defensive line to dominate. I think they're going to have a size advantage, and I think they can generate some pressure from the inside. So if they can just prevent some big plays, I do think Byram Hills has a really good chance to win this playoff game. Thoughts on them, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like that offensively they've been very efficient. 4 games with 28 plus points. They, the biggest struggle or the fear that I have is that they have some injuries which are going to cause more players to step up and make big plays. They definitely need to develop the run, and then in essence create the boot action. And I think that's going to be really what gives their offense a lot of life. If they can have that nice dynamic between the two of them. And defensively, they've been very efficient as well. They've been forcing a lot of turnovers, and they have to just keep doing that. Create inefficiencies, on Briarcliff's offense, and then really capitalize with your high-powered offense.
Yeah. All right, so who do you got winning?
I'm going to go with Byram Hills. I think Byram Hills is a top-level team. They're really one of the toughest teams in B, especially when it comes to Pleasantville and Byram Hills. They look like they're one of the biggest battles of the entire season so far. So it's almost like Byram is kind of itching to have a rematch at some point. And I think that Byram is offensively, they've been very efficient. Defensively, they're just extremely tough, right? So it's really difficult to kind of run anything on them. And offensively, they find a way to score every single chance they get. So I think Byram's going to win here.
Yeah, I mean, last time they played, it was a real close game for most of the game. And what Byram Hills had an issue with was not finishing drives due to penalties, due to turnovers. I think this time they finished drives. I think this is a very focused Byram Hills team. I know injuries are a key factor in this one as well, but I think the guys step up, and I think they finish drives this time. I'm going Byram Hills. All right, Mars, let's go to the last B game. We have the number 6 seed Bronxville, 1-7, at number 3 seed Nanuet, who's 5-2. Rematch of a week 1 game where very, very close game that Nanuet pulled off at the end. And let's start with Bronxville. Bronxville has gone through a lot, Mars. They've had to deal with a lot of injuries. They've had to deal with a lot of heartbreak losses. Offensively, it's the number 4 offense out of the 8 schools. Defensively, number 6 out of the 8 schools. They've had to deal with injuries. I mentioned changing quarterbacks. Last 2 weeks, the offense has struggled, right? 6 points and 8 points the last 2 weeks. It's been difficult to run in between the tackles, especially against this Nanuet defensive front. So I do think they have to get out on the edge, and they have to, again, hitting some big pass plays, some quick hitters to get your quarterback comfortable, and at times take some deep shots. They're going to have to be pretty aggressive offensively. Bronxville has shown the capability with the offensive line that have some size in that they can move the ball, right? The last 2 weeks has been a struggle, but they have shown times this season that they can be a very potent offense, and they're going to have to be, or Nanuet's kind of going to suffocate them. So it's going to be really important for Bronxville to not turn the ball over and see if they can generate some chunk plays passing the football. Defensively, the last couple of weeks has been a struggle to stop the run, and that's a big concern heading into this week, right? Bronxville has to slow down the run game because that is what Nanuet's bread and butter is to be physical, to run the football, and so Bronxville has to match that if they want to pull off this upset. So it's going to be really, really important. They're going up against a scrappy offensive line in Nanuet. Bronxville has some size up front and in that front seven who can run and make tackles, so it's going to be really important to them to match the physicality and force Nanuet to beat you passing the ball. I mean, that's got to be the mindset in those heavy sets. You got to make sure you line up correctly, identify some tackle overs, identify if they're bringing some tight end over stuff. You got to line up correctly versus them because if you don't, they're going to out-leverage you. Thoughts on Bronxville, Mars?
Yeah, I think Bronxville has been really had one of the toughest seasons of anybody, losing a lot of close games. I think roughly like 3 or 4 close games in the final. Yeah. Whether it's overtime or in the final seconds, something like that. And, if you switch all those games, Bronx will be one of the top level teams in B right now. So I think they have the skills, they have the ability to be there, but the injuries are definitely having a lot of problems for them. I think they can move some buys with the offensive line and create some big plays, but it's going to have to be efficiency about, the playmakers on Bronxville to get to the outside. And defensively, they're going to have to stop the run. I mean, Nanuet's going to try to overpower them. So they're going to have to slow that down and get their offense more abilities or more chances to try to score some points.
Yeah, and when we go to Nanuet, Mars, this is another team that offensively has some inconsistency as well. The number 5 offense in points scored. Defensively, they're number 2. So defense has been really strong and kind of been their identity as well these last couple of seasons. But let's start offensively. We know this is going to be the Moran show, right? He had a touchdown last week. He's their do-it-all type of player, similar to Daniel Picard. They'll line him up in multiple different facets to get him the ball. He'll line up at the running back spot, quarterback spot, wide receiver spot. He plays defense. I mean, this is a very well-rounded player. And I actually like what they're doing with him, like moving him around. And it creates different issues for your defense. When he's lined up at the quarterback spot, it allows Nanuet to bring in an extra blocker. right? So to me, that's a nice little wrinkle in there. But the question I always have, and similar to what I say about Pleasantville, who else is going to step up and generate big plays offensively, right? And that's going to be the big thing. They have a young quarterback there that switches in with Moran at the quarterback spot. Can they generate some big pass plays? Right? Can a guy like Flanagan make a huge play at the tight end spot throwing the football? Right? There's got to be some other guys. I think this offensive line has played pretty solid for the most part all year. They're a scrappy group. They're not huge, but they need some other guys to win some one-on-one battles and to make some big plays outside Moran. We know I'm expecting Moran to get 30-plus touches in this game, but who else is going to make big plays for this offense? Defensively, listen, this defense has been really steady, Mars. They forced 2 turnovers last week, even in the loss, a fumble recovery, and INT, which gave them a chance to tie the game or to potentially win it. They've had 4 games where they've allowed 14 or less points. They haven't allowed more than 21 points in a game this season. So this has been a steady defense. And at times they're going to give up yards, but they have been really stout at times. Even when they give up yards, they've been strong once you cross the 50 or once you get into the red zone. They stop you from scoring touchdown, and that's the game. That's the game right there, right? They are the epitome of the bend but don't break defense. And they got some guys out there that could be some playmakers and make some big plays. They're just a scrappy bunch of guys. So I actually like this Nanuet defense. Going up against Bronxville, going up against some of that spread stuff. But if they can try to generate some negative plays against Bronxville, hold that Bronxville offense at bay, I think they're going to find some opportunities on the offensive side of the ball, and they'll control time of possession more. Thoughts on Nanuet? Yeah,
I feel like when you look at the offense, it's based around Moran, right? And Moran has been going Super Saiyan all season long. He's been having a great year, but like you said, it's about who's gonna step up. That's not Moran, and who's gonna be the one that kind of helps him carry the load here. Because the key thing is that he's been kind of running the show, right? And if he starts to slow down, or defense is keying on him, then someone else has got to step up to make the plays here. And I think defensively they've been very stout. I think they've been, like you said before, the bend but don't break defense. They allow for drives to happen, but once they start getting into the red zone, they don't really allow points often. Yeah. So I think that's going to be the key thing, is that they have to kind of really try to slow down any sort of big play that Bronxville can make, and really try to develop the outside run with Moran. And I think they'll give them the advantage. Mars, who do you got winning? I'm going to go with Nanuet. I was originally thinking that, it was going to be a closer game. But Bronxville also has a lot of injuries. It's really tough to kind of, bounce back and go to your full strength when you have a lot of guys missing. And I think that when you look at Bronxville at the beginning of the season versus where they are now, they have a lot of guys out, right? And that's going to be the key thing. I think that separates between Bronxville and Nanuet. I think Nanuet just has more health. And I think that they also have, Moran that's going to be showing out big time in the playoffs. Yeah. I'm going to go with Nanuet. I agree with you. I'm going to go with Nanuet, too. I just think been too strong, too steady defensively, and Bronxville hasn't matched that defensively on their end. All right, guys, that was B. Again, appreciate you guys for sticking with, joining the show. We love talking football. Make sure you guys put in the comments who you think are going to win some of these matchups that we're talking about. Any questions you have, make sure to put it in. Also, give a thumbs up and subscribe for the video. It really does help us, guys. We're jumping into the Hudson Valley Football League, Mars. Let's talk about the semifinals, an opportunity to go to the championship. Big time games right here. Let's talk about the number 2 seed Spring Valley 5-2 at Greeley. The number 1 seed 7-1. Week 3 rematch, Mars. I think this is kind of where it really started to showcase itself. Week 3 they won 49-21 versus Spring Valley. I think it was a big statement game starting there for Greeley, but now got to play them again. It's always hard to beat a team twice in one season. But Spring Valley, Mars, they have won 4 straight since that game. And Spring Valley is playing at a high level right now. And offensively, listen, Jaden Scott has been solid. He had a touchdown pass last week, was really strong the week before. Dom Vargas caught that receiving touchdown. And Noah Chambers, we know, is a guy running the football who's been really potent for them. But you got to give credit to this offensive line. I mean, they've had 3 straight now 40-plus point games before last week. Right? Last week was it was a defensive battle. But before that, Spring Valley had 40-plus points. And this offensive line, along with the speed of Spring Valley and their quarterback play, has really shot off. And this is the number 3 offense in points scored out of the Hudson Valley Football League for a reason. They have speed. And if they can hold up, again, up front, I think they're going to move the ball versus Greeley. Now, how much points you're going to score is going to be the big question. You can't turn the ball over. Greeley has been feasting on turnovers. And so that's going to be huge. If they could play a clean game, I think that they're going to move the ball and put up some points. Defensively, really strong performance last week, Mars. They only allowed 3 points. 3 straight 20 or less point games now.
Spring Valley, we know, is a aggressive defense. They're going to come at you with the blitz. They're going to try to generate some negative plays. Have to be aware of these guys break and contain. And can they play man coverage against that wide receiver core of Greeley, who has been really strong? This defense is number 4 out of the 10 schools in Hudson Valley Football League. So pretty strong group. But Mars, they had their hands full with this Greeley offense. What are your thoughts on Spring Valley?
Yeah, they've been playing a lot better recently. I like the way that their offense has just been a lot more efficient. Jaden Scott has been doing very well as well. The offensive line has been impressing me every single week. And I think the offense have just shown that they have a lot of speed. And if you get them in the open, they can make a lot of plays. Defensively, they're going to have a really tough time against Greeley because of the fact that they just have so many weapons and the way that they can just move the ball. The secondary is going to be tested big time, and you got to see how they match up here.
Yeah. When you go to Greeley, Mars, this is the number 1 offense in the Hudson Valley Football League for a reason. Really, really potent. Starts with their quarterback, Osh. Another multi-touchdown performance last week in the quarterfinals. Their running back, McKinney, really, really strong runner for them. He has been extremely dynamic also as a receiver. But, man, really, really dynamic in the backfield. They have multiple guys at that quarterback-running back combination out of their spread, and that's what they want to do. And they want to get the ball out of his hands quickly. If Spring Valley is going to be really aggressive with stunts, Mars, they had to do some quick throws to this wide receiver core that has been really, really strong, led by guys like Blakesley and Hessert. If you're going to get man-to-man coverage, they could kill you. And so that's going to be the big thing is just, again, Greeley also so potent. They put up a lot of points. They've also had some turnovers as well the last couple of weeks. So if they can be cleaner with the ball, I think they're going to move the ball a lot as well and put up some points because it's hard to play man coverage against them because of that wide receiver core. And their quarterback has taken advantage of that. So I think that's going to be kind of the formula is knowing where the blitz is coming and attacking that if Spring Valley is going to be aggressive. If they're going to play off, you can run the ball, right? So it's a pretty strong offense. Defensively, this is the number 5 defense, Mars, out of the 10 schools. They've allowed 24 plus points now, 3 out of the last 4 games. But one thing they've done really well, force turnovers. And if they give their offense extra possessions, it puts so much pressure on you as a football team to try to match their offense. It's hard to do. But forcing turnovers, they do give up some big pass plays last week. Look for Spring Valley to try to take advantage of that with their speed, Mars. But, man, forcing turnovers and getting your offense more possessions, that's been the Greeley formula. Mars, thoughts on them?
Yeah, I think Greeley has been very impressive. I think really like the way Osh has been playing. The skill players for Greeley are just extremely dangerous. They can make a lot of big plays. And I think that they just need to be efficient with the ball. No turnovers. Defensively, they've been winning that battle the entire season. So every single time they get a turnover, the offense gets another opportunity, and all of a sudden they just keep going up more and more points. So defensively, they have to continue that trend. Win the turnover battle, get their offense more opportunities, and I think they'll keep scoring.
All right, so what do you got?
I'm gonna go with Greeley here. I think I really like Spring Valley, and I might have to go back on my Spring Valley pick.
Oh no!
I'm
already
like,
chose, man. It's already in ink.
I know. I really wanted to. I really was hoping that they would go all the way here, but I think Greeley has just been very efficient. I think that they've been dominant on the offensive end, and defensively they've been setting their just more opportunities on offense. I think Spring Valley has been playing a lot better. You know what? And this should be a driving force for them to prove me wrong. To say, hey, you should have picked us. You should have kept with your pick that you said at the beginning of the year. Because, I said that they're going to go to the HVFL title. And I think that, they have the ability to do so, but I just think Greeley just has too much. And they're playing at home as well. So I'm going to go with Greeley.
I agree with you. I am going to go with Greeley as well. Spring Valley is playing at a high level. 4 straight wins. It's no fluke right here. Hard to beat a team twice, but Greeley, they just score a lot of points. They put so much pressure on you. It kind of, you press offensively, and that's where the mistakes come. I'm going Greeley. Let's go to the other semifinal match, Mars. Number 2, Edgemont, 5-2 at number 1, Walter Panis, who's 6-2. Rematch of week 4, where Panis kind of put a beating on Edgemont. I think it was 45-7. Let's start with Edgemont, Mars. My big concern about Edgemont is health. They have been beat up. I think this is a team that has really played strong and been a gritty and feisty team, and it's a big credit to the players and to the coaching staff there. But it feels like health is starting to catch up to them. And I didn't see Alinkos play last week. Again, not sure if what's going on at that point. And again, wasn't able to watch the full game, but I didn't see him out there that much. And he has been so good for them that him not playing would be a huge loss. I mean, he's so good for them, but they're going to need other guys to step up. And last week they did. When I look at David Barlow at the running back spot, he had 104 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? So he stepped up for them. They've had another quarterback stepping in David Larson, who he had 4 completions for 68 yards. And they're going to need some of their veteran guys who are really talented players to kind of carry the load. Davis Kim is a guy at the wide receiver spot. He had 4 catches for 68 yards and a touchdown. He's a dynamic receiver in the slot. And Milan Leonardo, we know him at the quarterback spot. He goes to the wide receiver spot. He is a big-time playmaker for them. He had an INT on defense, but he's a big-time playmaker for them. He also needs to generate some big plays. They're going to have to put up some points, Mars, against Walter Panis. Going to be tough running the ball. This offensive line has their handful. Let's just say that. I think they have really stepped up all year long to compete with some of the bigger schools, but they're going to have their handfuls this week. Defensively, this is the number 3 defense, Mars, in the Hudson Valley Football League. 4 games of 8 points or less. Last week, they forced 2 turnovers. The defensive front 7 has been really, really important for them, and they're going to have to keep this Walter Panis speed in between the tackle box. They cannot let Carlucci get outside. He's going to kill them if he gets to the outside. Nate Parsons on that defensive line has been really big for them. He had 12 tackles last week, Mars. Really potent, Mars. What are your thoughts on Edgemont?
Yeah, I think when you look at Edgemont, their health has really been what's concerning here, because the fact is, they've been gritty all season long, been playing tough, but they just might lose a lot of their key guys because of the health concerns. But yeah, I think you really look at this offense. G. Leonardo has been very impressive this year, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this offensive line goes up against this Walter Panis front 7. But it's going to be very interesting, because if they can find a way to open up some lanes for their playmakers, then I think they'll get some good amount of points. But it's gonna be really tough. Walter Panis' defensive front is really good. They need to try to keep contained and kind of condense the amount of plays that Walter Panis can do outside. Yeah,
let's go to Walter Panis, the number 2 offense and points scored. I also didn't see Ronga play for them last week, and he has been so good for them as well. So I'm not sure of his status, but other guys have to step up. I mean, we know about, obviously, the quarterback Carlucci was very strong last week. He is that spark of that offense, throwing it and running it, but running the ball, especially on some quarterback design runs to the outside, are going to be really, really important in this game. I think he has an opportunity there. There's been some other guys, Ryan Salazar, Evan Salazar, have guys who have stepped in and also had to have made plays and going to for this offense. And I think they have a size advantage up front, Mars. They're going to have to move some bodies. And I think a heavy Carlucci day is coming in this one. On the defensive side, is the number 1 defense in points allowed, Mars. And Randy Weisner has been really, really big for them. Edgemont is predicated on running the football and passing out of that. If they can slow down the run game, it really puts Edgemont. It's not exactly where they want to be. They do have weapons, right, in G. Leonardo and Davis Kim, but you have now a new quarterback in. That could spell some disaster if you can get him into second, third, and long and generate some pressure. And I do think Walter Panis can do that. So it's going to be real important. Thoughts on Walter Panis, Mars, and tell me who you got winning.
Yeah, I think Walter Panis is a very efficient offense. They've been kind of doing a mix and match of a lot of things, but their offensive line has been playing well. The rush offense has been very efficient as well. I think defensively is really what's more impressive to me, because of the fact that they have a good front 7. Really difficult to run anywhere inside, but that means that they have to really try to keep contained. With all that being said, I'm going to go Walter Panis. I think Walter Panis has the overall better team in general. I think they have more skilled guys that can really hurt you, as well as a defensive front that can really narrow down what you can do. And I think that even though G. Leonardo is a very great athlete, he can make a lot of plays, it's hard to run past this this defensive front that Walter Panis has. I'm going to go Walter Panis.
I agree. I'm going Walter Panis. I just think they have too many weapons, and I think injuries are catching up to Edgemont. Mars, that was all the playoff games that we broke down to. This is the last regular season games for C&D, and we're going to give our game picks right now. And again, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Obviously, you can go back and watch anything you missed and give any last-minute questions that you have. But let's start it off, Mars. Valhalla 5-2 at Putt Valley, who's 2-5. Big lead game for me. Valhalla's lost 2 straight, Mars. I think they bounce back this week. I'm going with Valhalla. Quarterback Brendan O'Neill had 2 pass touchdowns last week to Basiaka Butcher. I think Basiaka has a big game in this one. I think the defense is what is really going to rebound on this one. Putt Valley's had times they've run the ball really well, and at times they've had struggles to do that. I think it's going to be tough sledding this week. I'm going Valhalla.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Valhalla as well. They have a very, very good offense, very good offensive line that allows them to really just get some run plays in. Defensively, they've been very tough to run on. I'm going to go Valhalla.
CD matchup, Woodlands 1-7 at Tucko, who's 7-0. League game Morris, I'm going to go with Tuckahoe. I think they just played at such a high level all season long. I think they finished the regular season undefeated in pretty dominant fashion. Annunziata, another 300 passing yard performance. Morris, he had, I think, 5 touchdowns total. Banky had 91 yards and a touchdown. Smith over 100 yards again. This defense also had 8 sacks last week. Look for the defensive front to really dictate in this game. I'm going Tuckahoe.
Yeah, I'm also going to go Tuckahoe. They've just been, dominant. They've been playing against bigger schools and still been playing very well. They have a lot of skill players that can make a lot of plays. Their front, both offense and defense, have been very impressive for me as well. I'm going to go Tuckahoe.
Albertus Magnus is 4-3 at Westlake, who's 5-2. League game, Westlake has already clinched the spot. Albertus Magnus is on a 4-game winning streak, Mars. They have played some really good football. Mike LaRusso has led that charge. He had 231 yards last week and 2 touchdowns. This defense is number 5 in points allowed. I think this game will be closer than what people think, but I am going to go with Westlake, Mars. I think this Westlake defense, Mars, number 1 defense in the C&D schools. This defense has really stepped up. Chris Cali, he had 2 receiving touchdowns last week. Also had 73 yards rushing and a touchdown. This was a guy I said before the season to keep an eye on. As he gets more comfortable, you're going to see him. He's going to be a big piece of them. But they have other guys as well. Osapinti at the running back spot's been really strong for them all year long. Pagan being efficient again, 4 of 6 passing, 2 touchdowns, also a rushing touchdown. I think that mix of that rush attack and his defense, I think it would be closer than what people think, but I'm going Westlake.
This is a tough game, but I'm going to go with Westlake. I think Westlake has a very good defense. It really narrows down, what Albertus Magnus can do. Even though Albertus Magnus has been on a win streak, I think Westlake overall has everything going well for them. The rush offense has been doing very well. With Cali, how he's been playing, I'm going to go with Westlake.
Ryeneck, 1-6 at Blindbrook, who's 2-6. This is a league game. Really big game for Blindbrook. They need to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Listen, Ryeneck, defensively, they're number 9 in points allowed. And going up against a Blindbrook offense that has really been playing well these last couple of weeks. Quarterback Minnick has had a passing touchdown. He's also had 81 yards rushing and a touchdown last week. JPD and Vernal has been really strong for them. My concern with Blindbrook is defensively, although they did play pretty well last week at home. I'm going to go with Blindbrook. I think Blindbrook wins this game.
You know me, I got to go with Ryeneck here. Ryeneck is going to prove me right once again. I had to go against them last week, but I'm going to go with Ryeneck this week. I'm going with them to win this game. They could ruin Blindbrook's chances at a playoff hopes here, and I think that's always kind of motivator for a lot of kids to be like, all right, we're going to ruin someone's day, so I'm going to go with Ryeneck here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a big one. CD matchup, Haldane 5-2 at Croton Harmon, who's 2-5 in a league game. Listen, Croton Harmon, defense is going to have to stop the run. I think Nussbaum has been pretty disruptive for them. Camieri, Ben Reed, they have some guys who can make some plays, but can they stop the rush attack? Haldane is going to be a huge question mark. And could quarterback Jacob Jones make enough plays on the offensive side of the ball against a scrappy Haldane team? I think this game will also be closer than what people think, but I'm going to go with Haldane. I mean, they were down big last week, had to come back. Evan Gianchinta, 113 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, also 16 tackles. Really strong two-way player for them. I think he is the difference. Brian Van Tassel, look for him to make a couple plays to complement it. I'm going Haldane.
I'm also going to go Haldane as well. They have a lot of ability on the offense, defensive ends. I think their offense has been very efficient. No issues whatsoever. I think their offensive line has been doing well as well. I'm going to go with Haldane.
Let's go to the last one. Irvington, 3-4 at Dobbs Ferry, who's 6-1 league game. This is a big game for Irvington. They need to win to clinch it. But man, they've also dealt with a bunch of injuries. The coach, who we do wish for a speedy recovery, not being with the team, they've had a lot to go against them, right? And going at Dobbs Ferry, Brian Dan, he had 3 touchdowns last week. Holman had over 100 yards rushing. Hardnett had a touchdown. And this defense, again, Dressel Lewis had his 9th INT, and Marty O'Leary led the team in tackles. I think Dobbs Ferry is really starting to get things going for them. I'm going Dobbs Ferry at home to win this.
Yeah, I think Dobbs Ferry is going to win here. I think their rush offense has been too efficient. You got Brian Dan, a guy who's just been doing well all season. The offensive line's been pushing a lot of bodies. At home, Dobbs Ferry's winning.
That's it, everybody. That was our show. I mean, we went through all the playoff games, talked about the last regular season game. We can't thank you guys enough for joining the show. Please make sure to give that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I don't see any final questions here, so we will close this stream. If you miss anything, you can go back and watch it. Again, thank you guys so much for all the support. I hope you guys enjoy this weekend's games, and we'll see you all